Events begin to take place in the hospital. The guy asks the doctor if he is sick, and whether it is possible to cure his disease. The doctor looks regretfully at his patient, because he doesn't know what to tell him. But later, the wise woman replied that this was not a disease, at his age this was a normal physiological phenomenon, and he should not worry so much. At the same time, embarrassed and joyful, the hero thought that such a young and hot thing was working on this particular shift, and then asked if he could go and if he needed medicine. When the guy started to leave, the girl got up from her workplace and announced that he didn't need to take medication, but he should keep an eye on it. Slowly the doctor began to approach, and the guy was terrified, because he didn't understand what exactly he should be watching for. The doctor took off the mask from her face and approached the guy's ear. She began to explain to Chen Guang that he had been having this for several days, and this was really too much, because in boys, physical development ends at the age of 22, until then he should watch less things that are useless for health, and take good care of himself. Feeling the tension, the guy agreed and promised to take care of himself, after which he thanked the doctor. Coming out of the building, he couldn't help but think that he hadn't watched anything like that lately. After all, it's been 5 days since he's been hearing a woman's voice in his sleep, as if someone was talking in his ear, and he's talking without stopping. This voice penetrates him like poison, and opens the door to his very heart. Because of it he does not sleep, tosses and turns at night from side to side, and in the morning the whole bed is wet. If this continues, he will soon not be able to walk. It all started with the fact that 5 days ago he took a mug that one of the passengers forgot in the car. That eccentric, said nothing, immediately drowned somewhere, and his mug remained lying on his back seat. Chen Guang then looked at him specifically, but still didn't remember his face. One might think that he saw a ghost. He left, of course, not a very valuable thing, just a metal mug with the image of some ancient Chinese beauty. The hero believed that he received karma for the theft. I don't understand what to do. He was thinking about becoming a monk, because it would be incredibly funny if a monk had a constant boner. Yes, there is only a month left in the English exam. If he does not pass the 4th level, he will not receive a diploma. Suddenly, someone wrote a message to the guy, asking where he was. He immediately remembered what he had forgotten, because he had agreed with Ven to study in the library. A moment later, the guy arrived at the library. There, an incredibly beautiful girl named Ven was waiting for him. Embarrassed, Chen Guang wondered what she was offering him. It was too much for him, and it seemed like his heart would stop. Ven turned to the guy, because he is already in his 3rd year, and at the same time he does not study English, and spends time on taxiing, and he really could have failed the 4th level, because of which he will not receive a diploma. The guy's nerves were on edge, but the girl was really right. She stood up and indignantly shouted at him to stop complaining, because she would do what she promised. She wanted to give him the best motivation possible, because if he did not get a diploma, he would work as a taxi driver for the rest of his life. The girl takes her words seriously, so she repeats again, if he passes English, he can kiss her here. She will take off her clothes and give him a whole 5 minutes to do everything about everything. After all, they are friends, and friends must make small sacrifices for each other, so she will do him a favor, even though they are not dating. After such a promise, Chen Guang will no longer have peace of mind. After all, if he passes the exam, he might see her figure. Expecting a catch, the guy looked into her eyes and asked if she was cheating him. But the girl really didn't cheat, because she was very serious. Because she found something on his laptop, and she thinks that he can do more than just look. And then, she pointed to his work. It was just a nightmare. Out of 10 tasks, he didn't answer not one correctly. The girl makes a deal only for his sake, because if he's not motivated somehow, then he's finished. Chen Guang exclaimed that one is a true friend, and promised to help with English and helps, albeit in a strange way, after which he thanked her. With lightning speed, he began to solve English problems with incredible diligence. And then he started driving home in his car. Even at home, he tirelessly continued to study the rules of English. Incredibly tired, when evening came, he gladly went to bed. Before falling asleep, his wish was that he would close his eyes and wake up knowing English. In a dream, a girl came to him and asked him to give him her damn blood for knowing English, because if he gave his blood, he would learn everything he wanted in a day. The guy woke up in a cold sweat. He was incredibly scared, because it was a stupid dream, and he didn't understand what the price would be in blood, because of course he wanted to pass the exam, but not at the cost of his own life. He begged the lady to finally shut up, because he was incredibly tired of these dreams. Meanwhile, the girl in the circle asked him if he could listen to her to the end, because she didn't say that he needed all his blood, she needed at least a nosebleed. She begged him to make a deal with that girl, because she wanted him help. There are 3,000 dimensions in her magic glass. With the help of measurement, he can achieve heights in any one skill he wants, and his English is generally nonsense. The hero continued to sleep as if nothing had happened, and the girl from the mug begged him to give her Chen Guang's blood, because she is the queen and will die if she does not receive it. Some time later, events continued to occur in the school library. Continuing to study diligently, the hero thought that he was already losing his nerves because of this exam, because yesterday he dreamed of a vampire who offered to teach him English for blood. Or maybe it was just her, the breasts were just right, and it's no wonder he lost sleep. Ven noticed and asked the libertine where he was looking. Immediately turning away, the hero became incredibly embarrassed. And the girl was wondering why he came to her aid then. In the girl's memories, the events took place in a computer club. Two angry men approached her and they began to pester her, offering obscene things. The imperturbable lady said that they should move away, or the asphalt under them would turn red. But with incredible speed, Chen Guang stood up for the girl. He politely approached the villains and asked them to let the girl go. After all, I wanted to resolve the conflict peacefully. The scoundrels did not listen to him, and began to kick him, because they did not want him to pose as a hero, because Wu Jin was their area. Suddenly, the girl was overcome by rage, her eyes began to glow red, and she became incredibly angry. With incredible power, she punched one of the rude people who bullied Chen Guang. With just a few blows, she was able to deal with the cattle. The hero asked the girl not to fight with them, because someone called the police, and they need to run away from here. The girl's rage did not stop, she was still in the same aggressive appearance. And she inadvertently hit the guy who originally wanted to save her. Feeling incredible pain, he realized how strong it was. As soon as the girl came to her senses, she immediately realized that she was mistaken. Returning again to the events that took place in the library, Chen Guang noticed that the girl had a strange face and asked what she was thinking about. She recalled their first meeting. He was a completely weakling, but then he rushed to her aid without hesitation. She kept thinking how he had the courage. Chen Guang asked not to remember this, because who would have known that the pretty girl would turn out to be a beast and kill two bullies with her defender at the same time. If he had known, he would not have interfered. And then, he aggressively asked the girl not to interfere with his reading. Some time later, they left the library, and the hero was thinking that he had huge gaps even in basic knowledge, and would he really have to give up breastfeeding? Suddenly, someone called the girl and asked her to wait. It was Zhe. If he had known that she would be in the library, he would have taken a place for them on the roof. He brazenly approached the couple and said that Van should not communicate with all sorts of beggars. Looking Zhe straight in the eyes, Chen Guang realized that he was simply insolent. Suddenly, the girl slammed her foot on the ground very loudly, and then she turned to the impudent man and told him to go away. Zhe was incredibly persistent in pursuing one. He flirted with her almost every day, but it was even sickening to watch, because the beautiful, it turns out, also cry from unrequited love. Who would have thought? Nervous, the arrogant guy said that Van was funny, but in fact he would not have approached her if it had not been for the condition and status of her family. The girl was not joking at all, and again sent the guy to go to hell. This angered him even more. After the insolent man's futile attempts, the girl thought that he was deliberately trying to piss her off, but this was not the case, because he liked her. Zhe realized that now the whole university would come running here to look at how she was telling him off, and he needed to change the subject. Pushing Chen Guang, he believed that the frog thinks that in the company of a swan, it also becomes a swan, but the frog should be careful, otherwise it will inadvertently be crushed. This made the hero laugh, and he asked the impudent man what is the difference between a swan and a frog. The impudent man understood that, of course, by status, because he was superior to him in all respects, he had higher status, better appearance and more money, there was nothing in which he was inferior to this frog. But this was the wrong answer. Chen Guang said that a swan is different from a frog because of bird flu, and since one swan here is already sick, the second one should get out of here until he gets infected. The lady was also pleased with his answer, because he put the impudent man in his place. This made Zhe incredibly angry, and the creature called Chen Guang will answer for this. Some time later, events continued to occur in the parking lot. Today there were an incredible number of passengers, and the hero was very tired. Suddenly, he noticed the mug lying next to him. The nightmares started after he took this mug. Maybe it was because of her. For such a cheap fake, the drawing is quite high quality. Having touched it, the guy felt that this was really good work. Of course, there is no witch in this circle. He thought he was just going crazy. Suddenly, someone shouted for the guy to remove his hand from Grandma Goo's chest. Looking around, the guy didn't understand where the voice was coming from, because there was no one here except him. Was it really a ghost? The hero tried to calm himself down, because ghosts don't exist. He was just overtired or he had schizophrenia. In any case, if you take the medicine, everything will go away. He thought that it was all due to fatigue. He should go home and get a good night's sleep, and immediately see the doctor in the morning. As he approached the exit, he found several people standing in front of him. This was a company that hated Qin Guang, and He was their leader. And suddenly, the hero realized that this afternoon he had disgraced this clown, and he, apparently, decided to settle scores with him at night. But it was good that Qin Guang took this with him. This time he was really prepared, and advised the men to get out of his way and let him pass. The impudent man just looked at him smiling. However, suddenly, he began to shout at the hero, if he kneels down and begs him very much, then he will, so be it, think about sending him to the hospital for only a month. But otherwise, it will make him disabled. Qin Guang was indeed prepared, and took out something from his pocket. It was a weapon with which he could attack and defend. The hooligans immediately became nervous, because they realized that it seemed to be a baton. He did not see this as an obstacle, because he believed that she would not help him very much. There were 6 of them, and they would not leave a wet spot for him. The leader ordered the hooligans to attack, instead of running towards Qin Guang at lightning speed. The guy was not so easy, and he was ready to fight to the last. With an incredibly deft movement of his baton, he neutralized his first opponent with a blow to the head. The enemy experienced incredible pain, because the blow hit him right on the head. He hit the next opponent directly on the arm, and thus it broke. The other hooligans noticed that the hero was distracted and decided to grab him from behind. They grabbed the guy from behind, but did not apply a painful hold on him, after which they began to punch him in the stomach and face. Feeling incredible pain, the guy realized that his vitality was leaving him. The bandits were literally going to break all his bones. One of them also took out a metal stick and wanted to break all of Qin Guang's bones. The red-haired scoundrel began to hit him directly on the head with a metal stick. Qin Guang noticed that his life was in danger. With the mug in his hand, he blocked the enemy's powerful attack. And with the help of his club, he made a counterattack and hit the enemy right in the stomach. The scoundrel doubled over in pain, because he had broken ribs. Qin Guang shouted to the villains to get out, or he is not responsible for himself. If they fight to the death, then one of them will have to die here. The villains became noticeably nervous and did not know what to answer him. He began to run away in a panic and asked the guy not to think that he was scared of him, because next time he wouldn't get off so easily. Suddenly, the hero looked at He threateningly, because if he said one more word, he would hurt him. With incredible speed, all of Qin Guang's opponents began to quickly run away in fear. Unperturbed, the hero continued to look after them, because he considered them cockerels. Blood flowed from the guy's mouth, and the cup he found was right in his hands. The same blood flowing from the mouth fell directly on the face of the girl painted on the cup. The blood that fell on the cup was immediately absorbed. Unexpectedly, the girl exclaimed that her patience had finally paid off, because she had been waiting for this for so long. Her time had come and blood was spilled on her. The guy continued to hold the cup in his hand, and thought that He was just an ordinary blabbermouth. And he swears that if he gets to the bottom of him again, he will spare no effort to finish him off. And the cup really turned out to be good, because it withstood the blow of the baton and didn't even crack. Some time later, events continued to occur in the dormitory. Qin Guang's friends in the dorm were playing a game, and among them was a guy named Bai Fang, and also a guy named Xiong Jingku, and another calm and silent friend named Lin Jinwei. Qin Guang burst into the room, and his friends wondered why he came back so late. He immediately took off his clothes out of fatigue, and as if nothing had happened, he put that same mug on the nightstand. But he only told his friends that he had been working and was tired as a dog, and immediately fell onto the bed. Suddenly, the lights were turned off in the dormitory at 12 o'clock. The guys didn't know what to do, but it seemed to them that Guan had already fallen asleep. They were going to curl up and go to bed. The next morning, events continued to occur in the hostel. That same magic mug continued to stand on the nightstand. The guy slept as if nothing had happened, and he didn't even have terrible dreams. It was as if someone started waking up the hero and asked him to get up, but he didn't want to do this at all, because he wanted to sleep some more. Suddenly, an unknown person began to pull him by the ear. The guy shouted that he had no conscience and asked him to let him sleep properly. As soon as the guy rubbed his eyes, he thought it was Xiong's joke. But how wrong he was when he found himself in a completely different place, although he definitely remembered that he fell asleep in his dorm. Suddenly, a girl appeared behind Chen Guang. She called herself a lady and asked the guy to turn around. The hero clearly did not expect to see someone here, because he thought it was a dream. As soon as he turned around, what he saw shocked him. A girl of incredible beauty stood in front of him. The ruler of 3,000 dimensions began talking to the guy. If he continues to stare at her like that, she will gouge out his eyes. The hero began to panic, because he did not understand what was happening here, and what kind of lady was standing in front of him. He believed that she was a witch or a bandit, and he was kidnapped. From the enormous stress the guy received, blood began to pour out of his nose. The lady was surprised, because she spent a lot of effort to move him here, and he calls her a thief. The embarrassed guy continued to look at the girl who captivated him with her beauty. Out of anger, the girl began to swing her fist at the guy to hit him in the face. When he asked her to stop, she could no longer do it, and punched him right in the cheek with all her might. Returning to the topic of conversation, the mug he found was actually a sacred glass and they were now inside him. Hearing this, the guy concluded that the girl was sick. The indignant lady asked not to be rude to her, because in 100 years he was the first person who dared to offend her in the world of the gods. Her father is the head of all gods, and in spirit, the sacred glass recognized his blood, which means that now he is the savior of this world. She did not have time to explain everything further. He must pass the test from 300 dimensions and help her return to her body. She asked him to go, because the dimension would soon close. Suddenly, the guy began to fly. He had exactly 100 attempts. If he held out for 6 months, he would complete the tasks and return to his world. The guy lost consciousness from moving to another dimension. But as soon as Chen Guang opened his eyes, he saw something unimaginable. In front of his neck was a dagger that sought to cut off his neck. In a split second, this dagger cut off the guy's head. After death, he woke up again. From that moment on, he knew that a dagger would now fly at him, and he needed to dodge. As soon as the guy dodged, he realized that he had come to life. He was on an unknown ship, where many people were fighting among themselves. After several deaths, he realized that this was the very test that the goddess spoke about. He can revive after death, but he only has 100 attempts, so he's fighting for his life and doesn't want to actually die here. The guy will definitely get out of here and kick this goddess's ass, even if it will be necessary to start over 100 times. With each death, he gained more and more experience, and remembered where the objects were. At one point, together with his allies, he managed to take the attackers by surprise, and eventually defeat them, after which they had a feast and the allies asked him to bring food. They also talked about a huge hand. According to legend, this hand was the size of the sea, and they also said that at the end of the sea there was an invisible wall. Even if the end of the sea exists, their entire life would not be enough to find it. Hearing this, Chen Guang didn't think anything of it at first, but soon, he still managed to see a huge hand. These invisible walls were the walls of the mug, and this endless hand was probably his. Meanwhile, the ship was again attacked by pirates. Having improved his fighting skills, the guy fought much better against pirates. And with incredible fearlessness he killed every pirate that stood in his way. The cursed mug and the cursed goddess, as well as the cursed pirates, were to blame for this. The guy wanted to take revenge on them all. Over time, the entire ship's crew welcomed the ship's new deputy captain. For the team, it was impressive that the dude became a senior mate in less than 6 months, but for others, it was not surprising, because Guan fought masterfully. He had already killed several dozen robbers single-handedly. 6 months after each death, he started from the very beginning. 20 years of battles made him a master. Today is the last day. He will finally leave this damned place, and the first thing he will do is deal with this goddess. Suddenly, a bright light appeared above his head. Chen Guang started to take off, and shouted to his team that he didn't know if he would see them again, and then said goodbye. Incredibly, his dorm neighbor appeared in front of him. When the guy started to get up, he accidentally hit her. It turns out that Guan slept under the table all night. It was surprising where he got the strength from after such a night, and he hit the girl painfully. The dumbfounded guy was shocked that only one night had passed. But after, he immediately apologized, because his whole body was numb, so he got up on the wrong foot. The girl answered him that if he wanted to pass English so badly, this is not a reason to go to such extremes, and this is how he only feels will drive the coffin. To avoid an awkward conversation, the girl went to get some food, and Guan also asked to get him something. When he was left alone with himself, he realized that his strength and fighting skills were preserved. With incredible hatred and anger, he looked at that very mug, who greeted him and asked how he was doing, because he participated in an exciting test. The sea is a simple dimension, in the language of their planet, it is lightness. In horror, the guy threw the mug, because, for no apparent reason, she dragged him into some strange world, and did not ask if he wanted this at all. He believed that she was not a goddess, but a kidnapper. The lady apologized to him, because he was already on the ship, and it was impossible to get off it. With incredible anger, the guy asked what it means it's impossible. He's no longer going to participate in this, he should pour on her test, and it didn't give in to him. As soon as he spilled his blood on the glass, he became its owner. There is no turning back. If he refuses to participate, then it will be considered a failure, and he will have to be killed. The lady considered him a stupid mortal, because it was impossible to do business with him normally. She asked him to think about it, because he benefited from the test. After thinking, the hero agreed, but every time after the test he would need time to gain strength and come to his senses, but for now he told her to stay here and pray that he would not change his mind. Leaving the mug at the dormitory, Guan drove somewhere in his car. Suddenly, his father called him. He wanted to notify that tomorrow the company will hold important negotiations. The guy needs to go to the hospital for his father and visit his mother. Chen Guang asked his father if he transferred the money for the medicine. This month he needs to pay 20,000 again. Suddenly, someone started calling his father. He asked his son not to worry about money, but most importantly to study well. They already have debts of several 100,000 yuan. And now mom needs 20,000 yuan every month for medicine. His father told him not to worry, but he worked hard every day, but he only earned 15,000 a month. It was because of this that the guy worked part-time as a taxi driver, and he received a new order. He worked all day and was not the least bit tired, apparently due to the 20 years he spent at sea. Suddenly, a girl noticed him. It was Ven who took his hand and said hello, and the guy was incredibly scared. The girl also began to get nervous, because it was strange that he had biceps on his arms. The hero replied that he trains every day, and that's where his biceps come from. For one, he has become much cuter with his biceps because he works out every day. The hooligans who were waiting for him again appeared in front of the guy. He introduced the head of the university taekwondo group to the hero, and wanted to see how he would cope with him. The girl seemed to disappear when the guy asked her to hide. The head of the taekwondo group heard that he was fighting with a baton that time, against the great art of Korean taekwondo. It will not help him, and it will break all his bones. He ordered Master Jean to stop the useless chatter and beat He. The taekwondo fighter immediately attacked the guy. He began to perform an incredibly powerful kick in the air. But Guan easily stopped the taekwondo attack. With incredible power, he grabbed his body and shouted that the master would pay for his action. Having struck in the air, Master Jean began to scream furiously, because he experienced incredible pain. Looking at this, the girl did not understand whether this was the real Guan. At the same time, the hero continued to fight bravely, but he did it much better, and easily launched powerful attacks against the taekwondo fighter, so strong that even Master Jean flew straight into He. A moment later, a slap landed across the scoundrel's face. The hero took him by the neck, because he doesn't joke with him. He constantly drags someone with him to beat him, and money cannot replace his bravery. The scoundrel begged him to calm down, because he didn't mean it, but Guan asked him to tell him what he meant, because yesterday he was a punk, today he was a taekwondo master, and tomorrow he knows who. This was the guy's last warning, and if he saw He again, he would kill him. After everything that happened, one went to He's father's house and asked him to talk to his son, and finally calmed down. Meanwhile, another man stood behind the girl and told Wen that Chen Guang was somehow suspicious and could do something with him, but Wen said not to do this, because he was her friend. The lady began to leave, and thought about how many more secrets Guan had left from her. Meanwhile, the guy started working again. He stood near the car and waited for the order. Suddenly, someone took him by the shoulder. It was a certain man who greeted Guan and wanted to communicate with him. But the guy reacted to this aggressively and said that the man was not his type, after which he took his hand. This made the guy laugh and he laughed. He continued to say that they needed to go and put his hand on the tree. Incredibly, an entire tree above him was destroyed with a crushing magical blow. The guy was noticeably nervous, but this inspired him. He bowed, after which he agreed to go with the master, because he was afraid that he was beyond his strength. I started walking along the path along the forest. CCTV cameras were installed in the trees. The hero noticed that they had been walking for a long time, the sun had almost set, and he was afraid of the dark, and Guan suggested they talk here. He said this because the surveillance zone of the university cameras ends here, and it is dangerous to go further. The man started to turn around and called Guan a brat. And then, he quickly began to run towards the guy to launch his attack. The attack was so strong that it slammed the guy into a tree. The incredible power of the attack nearly toppled the tree. The hero didn't understand how he would do this, because his whole hand was numb. He wanted to know what kind of man this was. The man came closer and asked why he didn't use his inner strength. Guan didn't understand what kind of inner strength he was, and thought that the man had read a lot of science fiction. After all, they are in the 21st century, and not in medieval China. The incredible strength of the men thought that it wasn't like he was pretending. Guan really didn't know anything. Suddenly, the man's phone rang in his pocket. He understood that it was Ven. It seemed that she found out that they were here. Instantly the man disappeared, as if he had never been there. The guy didn't understand how he did it. Was it really with the help of internal strength? Exclaiming, the hero asked the man to stop and take him as a student. Meanwhile, the man behind the tree continued to watch him, and thought that the guy should say thank you, because he didn't do anything to him, even when didn't teach him, and he's certainly not a benefactor. The question was, who is he? If he doesn't know anything about inner strength, then how could he resist his blow, because his hand hurt a lot. Some time later, the hero had already returned to the city, and the grandfathers thanked him for giving them a lift. One of them is filming today, and she invited the guy to watch. But unfortunately, he was busy today. Suddenly, an incredibly bright light flashed next to them. The hero immediately rushed there, because he wanted to understand what it was. With incredible speed he drove his car to the scene. And then he started running. Unexpectedly, he discovered a sinking ship. People started jumping out of it to escape. They were lucky that they had life jackets and life preservers. One of the men said that everything was fine, and then in the back of that beautiful boat something exploded. A fire was lit and smoke rose. The engine probably exploded. In theory, no one can get to this place. Suddenly, two girls, actresses, were discovered. They were suspended high in the air. The ladies were actually hung right on the ship, and they could not unfasten the belts on which they were suspended. One of the ship's passengers ordered the captain to lower them down quickly, but he couldn't do it, because it seemed like something had short-circuited. Meanwhile, people continued to escape by swimming in the water. The ship capsized and the two actresses fell into the water and were under the ship. There was incredibly little time. Guan gave his clothes to the old man and ran to save people. Bravely diving into the water, he began to swim to the girls to save them. The passengers who escaped were surprised because they saw a guy who was swimming incredibly fast. At the same time, in his thoughts Guan was counting down the time to understand how much oxygen the girls would have. Exactly 30 seconds later he swam up to one of the girls, and at the 35th second she had already hugged him and was almost saved. At the 40th second, he lifted her to the surface of the water so that she could breathe. After which, he saw two more girls. They were definitely the same actresses. At the 60th second, he again rushed to save the two girls. When the 80th second arrived, one of the girls had already lost consciousness, while the other was still conscious. One of the actresses noticed him and was glad to see the savior. Suddenly, the guy threw it aside and began to save the girl who was unconscious. The drowning lady also begged him for help. The girl chose the wrong time to show selflessness. At that moment the guy realized that he couldn't find the damn lock. Suddenly, exactly at the 100th second, he managed to unfasten the girl. At 101 seconds he began to approach the second girl. Almost 2 minutes passed, he had to continue to hold on. Swimming up to the second girl, he also managed to unfasten her belt. Unfortunately, by then she had already lost consciousness. With incredible effort, he continued to pull the two girls, because he needed to save them quickly. But fortunately, the guy still managed to get to the surface of the water to breathe. Those watching could not believe how this could happen, because the actresses were tightly tied and could have suffocated underwater. When the man saw this, he could not believe what was happening, because he thought that this was the sea god. Flying over the ground, Guan ordered all the people to disperse. And together they landed in the lifeboat. The ladies weren't breathing, and the guy wanted to do everything possible to save them. First of all, he started doing cardiac massage. And then he was going to breathe air into the girl. One of the girls regained consciousness, she was fine, and she needed to help her friend. The watching men considered him an alpha male. After all, he saved 2 beauties and can now kiss them on the lips with impunity. Fortunately, the hero managed to save the 2 actresses, and they were conscious. As soon as they regained consciousness, Guan noticed how beautiful they were, but he didn't mean anything obscene, he was saving them. But after the rescue, the guy, as if nothing had happened, decided to run away. If he quickly floats away from here, then no one will see his clear face, much less take a photograph. It was good that he was a fast swimmer, otherwise they would have filmed him in his underpants, which would have been an incredible shame. Guan's fans continued to run after him tirelessly, they wanted to take pictures with him and give him an award. As soon as he saw the fans, he borrowed his grandpa's hat for a while and started running again. The fans begged the hero to stop, because they wanted to take a photo with the hero in shorts as a souvenir. In the meantime, the actresses were finally saved, their health was no longer in danger, medical equipment was brought into the canteen, and they needed to have an electronic cardiogram done. Guan meanwhile, he was glad that he had finally escaped from them, no one should have found him here. Well, as soon as he came out, he saw a man who saw everything that was happening. The guy was simply dumbfounded when he saw a whole crowd of people, and it was as if he turned into stone from shock. One of the men kindly provided the hero with a towel. The guy thanked him and began to put on the towel below his waist, and the girl saw her savior. She wanted to give herself to him, because he was incredibly hot, and even began to think about the fact that they would have a wedding. Another actress, meanwhile, asked a girl named Yage if Guan Li saved them. A little embarrassed, the girl replied that this was indeed so. The other actress immediately touched the girl's forehead, because she didn't know if everything was okay with her, because she blushed. Everything was fine, she just needed to get tested. In this case, after the inspection, they will approach him together and say thank you personally. Confused, Yage agreed to these conditions, and they went for an inspection. Meanwhile, they were looking for a new robe for Guan to wear. It was a costume for filming. If it gets stolen, it will be their own fault, because it's clear that it's very expensive, and the guy asked to give him simple clothes. This made the man laugh, because now they only had this knightly armor left, it shone incredibly and was just a sight to behold. Guan has such a powerful body, he also swims fast, he needs to become an actor. That same man turned out to be a producer who invited Guan to have lunch together before he left. Given that the director liked him, he needed to take advantage of the moment and make acquaintances. But Guan politely refused him, and promised to return later and return the things, because his car was parked there on the road. If it was towed, then tomorrow he would not be able to earn his lunch. The producer immediately stopped him and took out a bag with cash, and he immediately handed Guan a whole huge wad of money. The guy clearly did not expect such generosity, and said that there was no need, because it was indecent to take money for help. The producer didn't think so, and told the guy to take the money, because he deserved it. Nowadays people don't refuse money, and the hero gladly accepted the reward. And then he immediately began to leave, thanking the producer. If he didn't need anything else, he would go, because he was afraid that something would happen to his car. Suddenly, an unknown man stood in his way and opened the door. Instantly their foreheads collided with each other. The aggressive man immediately started shouting that Guan was blind. Guan immediately apologized, he didn't notice him. The man immediately saw that the guy looked impressive in this suit, he should have done his hair in those days, and he would be exactly like the admiral. And he also has a muscular body, and he is also cocky, and the man immediately invited Guan to star in the film, but Guan did not study to be an actor, and does not know how to act. For the guy it wasn't scary that he didn't study, they wouldn't take him for the main role right away, he would film it himself, they'd do more takes and everything would work out. A little impudently, the guy asked whether they pay a lot for amateur games. The man immediately realized that the guy was businesslike, if he stayed in the frame for 30 seconds, then 100,000 yuan would be his. They had a big shoot, and they didn't complain about money. Looking at his hand, the hero thought that today he was attracting money, with 100,000 he could pay for medicine for 5 months. The heroes were already in anticipation of the role. As soon as he parked the car, he would immediately come. 30 seconds were nonsense for him, because he had been posing as a pirate for 20 years, and he would clearly cope with this task. The man went outside and introduced himself as Ding Xiaojiang, and he will keep his word. Today Guan may not rush to return the suit, because he may come in a couple of days, when the filming begins, and he will take him for the role. The actresses noticed Guan leaving and did not understand how they could let him go, because they wanted to thank him for everything. One of the actresses even asked Sister Ju to prepare money. The girls did not know where to look for him now. Ding Xiaojiang gladly pleased the actresses, because he invited him to act with them. In a couple of days they will meet with him again, and there will be a lot of time for gratitude. Meanwhile, night had already fallen in the city. Guan ran non-stop to his car to park it, but the police inspector and the old man were already standing next to her. The hero began to get incredibly nervous and explained to the inspector that he had run to save people. Suddenly, the inspector shook Guan's hand, because he recognized the same savior in him. Today he will not deduct points from him on his driver's license, but next time, he needs to follow the traffic rules. He is a real brave man, and they are all here for him. The guy was incredibly happy, because he did not expect such an attitude from the inspector. Meanwhile, actress Yage looked at the hat Guan was wearing and dreamed. Her colleague couldn't understand why she was looking at this hat so fascinated. She began to smell it, because it was Guan's hat. Yu was incredibly happy, because finally her little sister Yage had grown up and fallen in love. The news headlines indicated that despite the difficult situation, the new hero, the hero in underpants, maintained his courage and presence of mind. Ryberman saved movie stars from death by swimming 50 meters in 23 seconds with lightning speed. He almost broke the country's record. People learned that the hero in shorts is actually a taxi driver. There was even a video of the heroes running from fans in their underpants. Real heroes are not afraid of humiliation when people's lives are at stake. This guy stripped almost naked to save drowning people. Meanwhile, when Guan was in class, he saw how Bai Fai laughed at his action, because of the journalists he had become a laughing stock on the entire internet. The hero immediately pushed Bai Fai away and asked the headman what kind of urgent announcements he had, because he needed to quickly change the subject, because he could be recognized. He didn't know how one would look in the eyes. If she cancelled their deal, he would not pass English. The roommate immediately asked Guan what he was doing. Suddenly, she realized something. After all, she definitely saw his underwear similar to the one the hero was wearing. The girl immediately approached Guan and asked if he was the same hero in shorts, but the guy began to deny it. The roommate began to prove that it was really him, but no one believed her, and Guan did not want to confess to anyone. The impudent Bai Fai asked not to attribute girls to him with abilities that he does not have, because the report said that that guy almost broke the country's record. He could walk along the seabed faster than Guan could swim. The classmates immediately began to argue, because the roommate knew that the hero in shorts was Guan. A fight almost broke out in the classroom, but Guan asked them to calm down, because one reprimand and they would be expelled. Suddenly, Guan told one of the guys in the ear to call the enemy somewhere where there are no cameras and break his legs. Without witnesses he won't prove anything, and he won't be able to play basketball. That's also a plus. A classmate asked them not to quarrel, because they are classmates, and this is their last year together. It needs to be spent peacefully. Suddenly, the girl accidentally tore Guan's t-shirt, and everyone saw his biceps. All my classmates were immediately stunned. The guy was a little embarrassed, because this was his only decent shirt, and he was going to go to the set in it. After the incident, the head girl began to announce that Professor Shen was ill, so the university replaced him with another teacher. This is a girl. Classmates immediately began asking the headman if this girl was dating someone, if she was young, if she had a boyfriend. The head girl offered to support teacher Zhua together when she comes, because she hopes that the whole class will take an active part in the upcoming Olympics. All the students agreed because Professor Shen did not count on this. Meanwhile, the new teacher began to enter the office. She exclaimed that she had not been here for a very long time. And then I asked the students if this was the right door. As soon as she entered the office, she immediately greeted all the students. All the students were stunned, because this teacher was incredibly hot. It was as if they had fallen in love with her, and were all going to go to the Olympics and take all the awards, because they were so glad that now Mrs. Zhuo would take care of them. One of the students shouted that he became the running champion last year and would definitely bring victory to their group. The lady thanked everyone for their support. If students want to participate in the Olympics, they need to sign up with the headman. The head girl invited everyone to sign up where they want, but we must take into account that only one student from the class can sign up for each sport. Whoever signed up earlier, then you are a participant. Guan was unshakable, because all the students were like a herd of sheep. Just now they were all against the Olympiad, and now they are fighting to sign up for it, and all because of some beauty. Bai Fan also fell in love with the new teacher and asked him to sign up for the Olympics. Guan couldn't even think that the whole class would go crazy because of their teacher. It seemed like he was the only one who wasn't under her spell, and he was about to leave class. Suddenly, someone touched the guy on the shoulder. It was the head girl. She was interested in where to enroll the guy, because he was left alone. The hero didn't understand why they needed him, because a lot of people signed up, but the headman made it clear that this was because the teacher said that everyone should participate, so it would be impossible to escape. A classmate began to brazenly mock Guanam, saying that he was too gentle for rough sports, and should not be forced, otherwise he would faint from overexertion. Suddenly, the headman no longer found the hero near her. An annoying classmate annoyed Guan incredibly, and probably very soon he will have one less finger. The head girl came up and asked to let the guy go. We need to think about the new teacher. She just took their group, and they are already fighting. If he breaks something for him, it will also harm her. The hero agreed, but warns that if he says anything to him again, he will get it from him in full. The headman was pleased with this, and now she asked the guy to sign up for the competition. Suddenly, the hero discovered that there will be a swimming competition. If he signs up for swimming, then everyone will know that he is a hero in shorts. His reputation at school will come to an end. Meanwhile, someone called the headman. It was the same arrogant student who wanted to say something to the headman. With incredible confidence, he noted that there was a guy in the architecture department who was a champion swimmer. He would also participate, and Guan would lose to him outright. But for the headman it didn't matter, because the main thing is not victory, but participation. After which, as if nothing had happened, the headman began to leave. Meanwhile, the arrogant student was calling someone on the phone. Classmates discussed that Guan would actually participate. Last month one of the guys invited him to the pool, but Guan told him that he could not swim. It was just an excuse not to go to the pool with a guy, because Guan, unlike some, is 100% straight. One of the guys immediately began to deny it, because he did not consider himself a person with a non-traditional orientation. But the other roommate incredibly began to get angry at this statement. The guys even started fighting among themselves to prove which of them had a traditional orientation. Meanwhile, when called Guan because she wanted to go to the library with him, his roommate took his phone away, and when wanted to tell him that today Guan was flirting with a beauty from their class, he also added that there was something between him and the prefect, and when needed to be pushed. The hero immediately asked to give up his phone, because he didn't want anyone to meddle in his business. Guan's friends considered him a soulless alpha, and wanted one to finish him off in the library. Some time later, when the guy came to the library, when asked him if he would really go play computer games, she thought that he no longer wanted to take English and the deal was cancelled. Guan began to talk about how he also needed to rest sometimes, because the girl had no idea how much he had studied in recent days, so now he wants to turn off his brain and regain strength. But the guy had it written on his forehead that he wanted to play, and the girl thought that this had nothing to do with restoring strength. He really hadn't played for a long time, and begged Ven to give him a proper rest. The lady agreed, because he had really been trying lately, but she had not played for a long time, and suggested that he go together. It would be more interesting and fun. Some time later they found themselves in a computer club. Van was doing everything on the computer, and she wanted it to load faster. She wanted to start playing faster. They started playing a computer game together. The girl had a rating of 7,000 in the game, and Guan had only a 3,000 rating. Guan didn't have much skill in the game, and he kept dying in the game. Because of his losses, he deliberately gave an advantage to his opponent, and the team asked him not to die on purpose. The guy was offended by this, and he didn't know what to say, and he simply pressed the voice blocking button to mute the voice of the person who reprimanded him. Guan already had 8 deaths, but he continued to play. One of the allies still had hope of winning, and he said that they could do it. But even his hero turned off his voice. Wen was jubilant and happy, because she saw how Guan screwed up. Due to the fact that the hero did not play for a couple of months, he lost his skill in the game, but when added that he did not have these skills, the hero had already begun to beg for them to replay, because now he would die again in the game, but the girl insisted that they play to the end. While drinking coffee from that same mug, the guy thought about what kind of life he had. And again he took another sip from the magic mug. Suddenly, the guy felt something unusual. Although the hero was playing, he was again transported to the magical world. The flying lady noted that if it weren't for his girlfriend, he would have lost the game a long time ago. The hero could not tolerate being mocked and instantly hit the girl in the face. The lady did not understand how a mortal dared to touch her. In fact, Guan had been wanting to hit her for a long time, and finally the opportunity presented itself, because he felt bad when he was stuck in this mug for 20 years. Confused by the guy's statement, the girl began to go down to talk to him. With lightning speed she began to fall to the ground. With incredible power, the blow came straight from the air into the ground, next to the hero, but he managed to dodge. When the girl landed, she showed no signs of life and lay on the ground. Looking at her, the hero did not understand why she did not move. He shouted that she couldn't just die, because she was a goddess. Putting his finger to her nose, he realized that she was not breathing. The hero didn't know what to do. If she died, he wouldn't be able to get out of here. Suddenly, the girl immediately stood up and began shouting at him that how dare he think about himself when she was dying, and now he would feel the full power of her divine power. With incredible anger, she punched him straight in the face. And then a series of blows followed, because she considered him a beast. From such an incredible onslaught of the goddess, the guy fell to the ground. The lady even thought about strangling him, but if he died, she would remain in the glass forever. The guy was incredibly lucky, because before she would have killed him for this, and 100,000 other spirits who came to hand. Covering his head, the guy was surprised that she could kill 100,000 spirits, because she passed out from one of his blows. She would not have had enough strength for this. The lady did not tolerate insolence, and again dealt a powerful blow to the guy on the head, because she spent all her strength trying to transfer herself into the glass, and he took it and hit her right after that, so she passed out. She herself made Guan her savior. She shouldn't have complained, because the guy hit her so that she knew that he was not some rag. He may be immortal, but he has character. He doesn't care what kind of goddess she is, and if wants him to pass her 3,000 tests, then she will have to respect Guan. The goddess is also having a hard time, because the guy thinks that he is the only one suffering here. She spent a lot of effort on getting him here, and she is running out of time. Because of this, she wanted to explain to him how the glass works. If the sacred glass is ready to begin testing, then he can fall into it at any moment, no matter whether he wants it or not. What kind of world will be in the glass depends on the fact that if there is liquid inside, then the sea will appear, and if he pours sand into it, then he will end up in the desert. There are 9 levels in total. Now he is only at the first level and this is the lowest level. Suddenly, the guy started bleeding from his nose again. The lady had no idea what was happening to him. Suddenly she realized that he had taken over again, and instantly punched him in the face. Immediately after the impact, he began his movement, and it was as if he had completely evaporated. Once again he found himself in an unknown world. This time the goddess did not have enough strength, so he will have less water. The hero immediately thought that she was taking revenge on him, but the goddess explained that he would not feel hunger, thirst, or fatigue here, and he could play as much as he liked. She pointed him to the computer. He had to go to it and start the test. The test would end as soon as he won. The guy was indignant, because he didn't like that there was a hard wooden chair behind the computer. He wanted a comfortable leather chair, but the goddess explained that this would require too much divine power. He should be glad that this chair is not one-legged at all. As soon as the guy sat down at the computer, he didn't understand what it was. But suddenly, he realized that he had just played this game. Is it possible that this time the test will have to go through games? To become the first in the game, you need 3 things, such as a quick reaction, high skill, and you need to know a lot about the game. If he wants to get out of here quickly, he needs to win as quickly as possible. 10 days later, he scored only 60 rating points. He so wanted to take a break from the game, but for some reason he wasn't tired at all. He just wanted to play and relax, and the goddess made him play until he lost his pulse. After 20 days, Guan had only gained 80 rating points. A month later he managed to win, but he didn't say he was happy, because he was tired of sitting in the same place. And finally, he can leave here. Suddenly, he found himself in the ordinary world, where one of his allies asked him to help. Only 1 minute passed from the moment he was transferred to another world. He turned to Ven to watch her play. Even the girl already thought that now they would lose. Guan stretched his hands, because he wanted to test his newly acquired skills. After which, he immediately began to play furiously. With the help of his new skills, he was easily able to use his character's best move on the entire enemy team. The lady was also incredibly happy, because with the help of Guan, she was able to kill the entire enemy team, with just one move of your own character, such as a meteorite. And finally, the heroes wanted to turn on their headphones to listen to his partner praising him. The whole team thought that he was just pretending to be a noob, and they were amazed at his playing skill. With delight, the lady wanted to know how he managed it. But at this time, the hero needed to step away for a minute, because he might vomit. He immediately ran to the toilet. Meanwhile, Ven was thinking that if he was tired of her, then that was not the reason to react like that. She was the star of their campus. As soon as the guy came from the toilet, he immediately sat down at the computer and left the game. The girl did not understand what happened to him. His face was pale, and she realized that he was ill. Guan added that he was apparently ill. In a shocked state, the girl did not understand how he could get sick in such weather. Perhaps he overheated, but he felt incredibly bad. The lady began to get nervous, because she didn't understand how he could overheat. She was so attentive that the guy began to worry that she wouldn't notice that he had changed while he was sitting in the circle. One had heard before that this happens when there is an imbalance in the liver. Although Guan was weak, he sometimes surprises with unexpected talents. A moment later, the girl began to pull the guy back to the university. Suddenly, the guy remembered that he had forgotten his mug, and then took it away. He wanted to rest and go to the parking lot, because he wanted to work at night. Tomorrow was the weekend, so he could go to bed later. But Ven did not tolerate such an attitude towards her own body. He was so tired, and at the same time he wanted to go as a taxi driver, and she ordered him to quickly go to bed. When the guy went to the dorm, he thought that the devil had pulled his tongue. He should have first taken her home, and then gone to taxi. Looking around, he thought about the fact that he felt bad from the game. If he got behind the wheel, he would just be distracted and get some fresh air, otherwise he wouldn't sleep at night. And then, having followed the guy, one realized that Guan was a useless deceiver, and would go to taxi, although he was terribly tired, and she also did not understand why he would not ask her for money. After all, she was his friend. It was just an excuse to get away from her. Now he is not driving for money, but for mood and relaxation. A moment later, the guy received a new order on his phone. He called the customer through the application to ask if the geolocation was correct. If so, then he will come for him now. But the person who was called did not understand who Guan was and asked him not to disturb his sleep. Guan, I didn't understand how this happened. Did he really have the wrong number? It couldn't be. He called through the app and wanted to try again. When he called the second time, the person on the phone shouted that he should not call here again. Guan decided to go to the indicated point and see who called him. If no one was found, he would cancel the order. A few minutes later he arrived at his destination. After calling, he heard the sound of a cell phone somewhere nearby. It was a girl who was sitting on the street and her phone was ringing. She was almost unconscious and almost lying on the floor. She got so drunk that she fell asleep on the road. Guan didn't want to take a drunk passenger. If something happened, the responsibility would be his. Suddenly, several men began to approach the girl. One of them came up rubbing his hands and thought that his little sister had fallen from the sky to him. She got drunk, and there was no one to look after her. He started screaming for the girl to wake up and wanted to know where her friends were. The lady asked him to leave and not piss her off, because she wanted to sleep. The man took her hand. He and his friend, like decent people, cannot allow a girl to sleep on the road, in case she catches a cold. They wanted to take her to a motel. Even if she woke up tomorrow, she still wouldn't remember a damn thing, and it was her own fault that she got drunk alone. They were damn lucky today. They couldn't miss this opportunity. Suddenly, Guan ran out of the car. Jumping up, he immediately struck the faces of the two impudent men, because he wanted them to go away from here. When the two of them fell to the ground, they wanted to find out who he was. The hero, not tolerating such behavior, wanted to throw one of the men into the ground. Pressing his head to the floor, he prepared to strike with his fist. Another shocked man wanted to stop him. He was ready to just talk and settle the conflict. Guan didn't think it was necessary. If he communicated with such people, he would be ready to finish them off with his own hands. When he had dealt with the two men, he began to fulfill the girl's order. He picked her up from the floor and then asked if she was okay. And then he carried her into the car and put her in. The men could barely walk, one of them shouted why he was lying, and he simply decided to take her for himself. Turning around, the hero ordered them to leave before he killed them. She ordered a taxi, and he was taking her home. Guan did not want them to compare him to themselves. Unlike them, he behaves like a person, but they are real animals. A moment later, the hero was already driving to the girl's house. Due to the fact that the girl felt bad, she vomited right in the car. The hero heard this and immediately asked how she was feeling and if she was feeling better. As soon as she threw up in the car, she immediately fell back to sleep and began snoring. The guy was of course outraged by this. His car now stank incredibly. After some time, they arrived at their destination. A little surprised, the guy saw that she lived on this street. He was kind today and decided to help her get home too. As soon as the girl woke up, she began to talk about why he looked at her so disdainfully, and she would definitely prove it, but Guan replied that he looked at her like that because she vomited in his car. After the girl regained consciousness, Guan immediately gave her water and asked her to remember to take anti-nausea medicine. She was very lucky to have met such a good man like him. Looking at the phone, he noticed that it was already 3 a.m. Therefore, you will have to sleep in the car. He stopped right at the place where he brought the girl and decided to go to sleep in the car. Suddenly, someone started screaming furiously. It was a girl who was screaming in the back seat, crying, and started fighting. The hero immediately restored her, because he was shocked by her behavior and thought that she was sick. She thought Guan was a rapist. Continuing to cry, she begged him to let her go or she would call the police. She considered him a stinking pervert, and shouted at him not to let his hands go, because there was a camera there. She would call the police, and he would answer for everything. Guan explained to her that he was a taxi driver, not a pervert. She ordered a taxi, so he brought her here. By the way, she, drunk, vomited everything here and he cleaned the car and bought her medicine for nausea. Since 3 a.m. he waits for her to wake up, and after everything he has done for her, she calls him a pervert. Getting out of the car, the girl shouted that she would check with the doctor. If he did anything to her, then he would rot in prison and regret it for the rest of his life. Guan exclaimed that if this was the case, then she should remember his face well, and don't forget to take a photo of the car's license plate along the way. The girl immediately began taking pictures of the car license plate on her phone. Guan introduced himself and said that he was a third-year student from Wujing University, and was studying at the Faculty of Environmental Science, and would also be looking forward to the police. While the girl was filming him, he said that his conscience was clear, so he was not afraid of her, and let him write a statement. After the girl took a photo of him and his car license plate, he asked her to look at her phone when she was home and she would see that she called him. He started to leave, and shouted that she was lucky yesterday that she met him, but let her know that not everyone is as kind as him. As soon as the guy left, the girl immediately noticed something lying on the floor. As she got closer, she saw that it was an anti-nausea medicine. As she picked them up, she thought that maybe he really was a good guy. After that, she immediately decided to look at what was on the taxi app. She discovered that the car's license plate information matched the license plates she had photographed. With horror, she discovered that he was indeed a taxi driver, and she rushed at him with accusations. The lady began to get angry, because she didn't understand what to do. He left, and now he probably hates her, she thought. The guy continued to drive his car as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, a call came on his phone. The number was familiar, and it seemed to be the number of that drunk passenger. Guan thought that she realized her mistake and now regrets it. She realized that she blamed an innocent person, and now she wants to apologize to him, but he will take it and not answer. He's such a touchy and petty person. And then he decided to turn on the radio and move on. When Guan arrived at the dormitory, he found the door open. As soon as he opened the door, he immediately asked why his roommates were not sleeping. Suddenly, the guy saw his underpants hanging and a photo of the hero in underpants. He was shocked when he saw this. And also, he was seized with panic, because now everyone would know who he really was. Suddenly, one of the roommates came in. Another friend also patted him on the shoulder and asked if he would now deny everything. If he hadn't hung his underpants out to dry, maybe they wouldn't have known it was him, but now he won't turn away. His comrades wanted to compare their asses to determine whether they were similar or not. The hero immediately took his underpants from them, they fed him up, started some kind of circus because of bullshit on the internet. And finally, he admitted that it was he who saved them, and he is the same hero in shorts. Everyone went nuts. The report said that he performed CPR on those two idols, and asked him to tell him what it was like to kiss such hot things. He became an idol for his comrades, because he saw actresses live and kiss them. They wanted to know what kind of lustful thoughts he had during first aid, and for him to share the sensations of kissing, whether his lips were soft and tasted, and not sweet or salty. Guan was angry with them because they were chatting like a flock of magpies. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door of their room. They were disturbing people from sleeping by yelling loudly. Because of this, the hero asked them to be quiet. He asked the guys not to tell anyone that he saved those actresses. If the university got wind of this, then the crazy fans of these idols would not give him a pass, and he asked them to keep their mouths shut. All his comrades promised that his secret was their secret, and they would not tell anyone about it. Some time later, Guan sent his father 40,000 yuan, and said that a friend borrowed money from him, and today he returned it. He sent this money to his mother for medicine. Meanwhile, his classmates were passing by. The girls immediately told the headman that her Guan was sitting there, and the place next to him was empty, because there were many who wanted to take this place, and they asked her not to miss her chance. The embarrassed girl exclaimed that Guan was not hers and asked the girls not to talk nonsense. There was nothing between them. But they didn't believe it, and pushed her to quickly sit down with the guy. With incredible awkwardness, the headman approached the guy and asked if Guan was alone here, and where his friends were. The guy was happy to see the headman and said that his friends were still sleeping, after which, he asked what sport the headman would compete in at the Olympics, because he would be rooting for her. The girl will compete in short distance running, 100 meters. It's a pity that gymnastics is not in the Olympic program. She used to do gymnastics. That's why the headman had such a disgusting figure, the guy exclaimed, and thought that like one would also compete in running. He hoped that they wouldn't collide. One is strong, no one will be able to defeat her. The timid girl saw that the girls had already taken the food and she was about to leave. And then, as she began to leave, she wished Guan good luck in the swim. Meanwhile, the arrogant red guy was watching everything that was happening, because the head girl forced him. He called Dong and asked about the participants in the swimming competition. Dong told him that, of course, they would take all the places. The other participants did not have a single chance against the members of the university swimming team. As agreed, if the case failed, he would transfer him 6,000 yuan. A few days later, the 9th Olympiad of Wujing University began. The students of the 17th Faculty of Environics were applauded. All the students in the group participate in the Olympiad, and for this they received the title of the best group of the year. In these tight swimming trunks, Guan already felt uneasy, and then the head girl and her friend stared at him, their eyes wide. He did not understand why they were looking at him like that. The girls tirelessly continued to look at the hero with loving eyes. Meanwhile, the red-haired guy came up, who noticed the head girl who was sitting in the stands, and said that their group's basketball team had just won with a score of 83 to 46. He wanted her to go and praise the guys, otherwise they would be upset. That's the feeling, as if she only has one Guan on her mind. Guan saw Pan Jiang and didn't understand what he forgot here. Red Pan Jiang was happy to watch Guan lose. Suddenly, Guan saw his rivals who would compete against him, but he was ready to fight bravely against them. After a moment, a signal should come that you need to start. Suddenly, the head girl exclaimed that she understood why Pan Jiang bet that Guan would lose. He bet the best swimmers in the university against him. The arrogant guy, as if nothing had happened, began to deny that the distribution of groups was determined by lot. He could not influence it, and this was just a coincidence. The headman's friend asked not to pay attention to the redhead. Guan's body was more muscular than those three, and she liked him the most. She was sure that he would win. Red continued to watch tirelessly, and thought that they didn't understand a damn thing, and now they themselves would see how their precious Guan would lose outright to those guys. The swimmers were preparing for the start and were already standing on the platforms. The hero overheard one of his rivals asking why they were all sailing on the same day. The opponent replied that the lot fell that way. It was an accident. Apparently, God himself decided that today the three of them should compete in this race. The coach asked them not to let the team down and to show everything they are capable of. They wanted to do this because they wanted to show the difference between professionals and amateurs. Guan began to laugh at their self-confidence. His opponents didn't understand why he was laughing, but there was nothing special about it. They just made him laugh. In a moment, the start of the competition was about to begin. The coach fired the starting pistol to announce the start of the competition. All competitors immediately rushed into the water. But number 4 jumped into the water too hard. It was Guan, and he realized that he had screwed up the jump. The spectators were amazed at what was happening, and they thought that number 4 was now definitely an outsider, although he was strong in appearance, but he jumped when the glitch, and he would not be able to catch up with his rivals. This is a 100% defeat. He dropped out at the very beginning. What a disgrace. Even when looked at the competition and thought that Guan would lose, because she decided that with such a body he would definitely win, but she saw that this was not the case. Meanwhile, the impudent guy reminded the headman that she promised to invite him to dinner if he won the argument. The girl immediately started shouting for Chen Guang to try harder and move forward. Wen immediately turned her attention to Guan's new fan. I remember by shouting into the phone about some beauty who was hanging herself on a Guan. Was it really her? Screaming won't help him in the swim. She apparently doesn't know that he never went swimming. Guan continued to swim, but was still very far behind his rivals. He's swimming in tight swimming trunks in plain sight, one might say naked. He didn't understand why shout his name. He's already embarrassed. He wants to dive deeper into the water and never show himself to anyone again. If Van could see him now, then she would die laughing. Suddenly, the guy turned his head. He noticed that he was very far behind and could lose like that. Smiling, he realized something. If you think about it, your opponents have no chance against him. With incredible speed and effort, he began to swim much faster. Gradually, he caught up with his rivals, covering the distance of the pool much faster than them. Literally a moment later, he was already able to overtake the opponents who were in front of him. The red-haired and arrogant guy was extremely surprised when he saw this. Guan began to catch up with strong rivals. Ven was shocked, because just recently he couldn't swim, and she didn't understand what else he could do in secret from her. The hero remembered how once a sea monster was chasing him for many kilometers, but he swam away from it and escaped, and he can even outrun a couple of roosters. The strongest opponents did not understand how he was able to catch up with them. Visibly nervous, they continued to watch his actions. But they thought that he would not last at this pace until the end of the competition, but the enemy still had to push. The coach also began to get nervous, because he saw how Dong Tao began to accelerate strongly. He could run out of steam at the end of the swim, and this Chen Guang really had talent. With incredible speed, Guan continued to swim and caught up with his strongest opponent. The head girl continued to root for Guan, and the red-haired guy was surprised, because he didn't know how many more hidden talents Guan had. Wen was delighted and noticed that Guan was swimming like a sea monster. The guy almost felt the taste of victory. He was ahead of everyone. He apologized to his opponent because he was too slow. At the same time, someone turned to Wen. This was the same man who had already told Wen that this Chen Guang is not so simple. He is not what he seems, and she should beware of him. The girl answered her uncle that she knew him well. She knew about everything that was happening in his life. Suddenly, my uncle said that earlier he had sent people to investigate a case related to poisoning in Guan, and it turned out that something strange really happened there. Van was immediately interested in what exactly. The hospital and the police should have had the results of his blood test after the poisoning, but they disappeared, and the tests of the people who were poisoned before did not show that they were poisoned. The lady was indignant, because then they were told that it was very serious. It seemed to her that the doctors had made up the diagnosis. Her uncle explained to her that he could not find out anything else. It was as if all traces had been erased. The girl thanked her uncle. She was wary. Her uncle, in turn, told her to figure it out on her own. He was tired of keeping her secrets. This reminded one of something, and perhaps Guan had nothing to do with them. The situation looked like some kind of nonsense. Since the uncle didn't find out anything, otherwise now it's her turn to investigate this matter, and she'll have to question Guan carefully this time. He doesn't dare to lie to one. The swim ended. Guan set a record time of 3 minutes 55 seconds. He was incredibly happy about his victory and watched his tired opponents. Mocking one of his opponents, Guan called him the best swimmer at the university, a professional. This incredibly infuriated the opponent. He broke his record, but still Guan overtook him, and he also pulled a muscle from overzealousness, and was doubly screwed up. Anticipating his reward, Guan began to rise from the pool. The man greeted the guy and called himself the head swimming coach, Qin Yuanhua. He believes that Guan has great potential and he likes him, after which the man invited the hero to join their team. The guy looked at the coach with surprised eyes and thought, if he becomes a professional athlete, he can participate in the World Olympics. With a little effort, he will become a world champion, and become famous, rich, marry a beauty, and have a great life. As soon as the guy presented this, he immediately started shouting that this was a great offer, and he incredibly wants to become a world champion. The coach at first didn't know what to answer to this, but then he said that most likely he wouldn't succeed. He has good speed and basic skills, but he needs to work hard to get to the Olympics, and in 3 years he will be able to compete. The hero did not want to wait 3 years at all, and remembered that the Olympics were being held this year. The coach liked Guan, but 3 minutes 55 seconds is not enough for the Olympics. He himself must understand that the higher the level of competition, the higher the requirements. But Guan knew that he had been at sea for 20 years, and was unlikely to be able to learn to swim even faster in 3 years. Besides, he had already grown up, so he definitely wouldn't get any taller. It would be better to make friends with that bearded man and become an actor. Thanking him for the offer, he said that swimming was just a hobby for him. He would not be able to force himself to train to become an Olympic champion, and asked him to go to Dong Tao because he was injured. It was true that Dong Tao could not move one leg. He was also incredibly furious with Guan. To celebrate, the guy began to leave and asked Tao if he had enough, or if not, then he might also lose in a fight. The angry boy said that they would meet again, and if it weren't for Zhang's plan, he would not have competed with Guan. Because of these pitiful 6,000, his whole life was ruined. Guan watched the pathetic loser with a smile. The head girl was also incredibly happy, because you have to be able to lose, and Pang Jiang should have apologized to Guan or waited until the 4 of them got together in the dorm and apologized to everyone there. The arrogant guy agreed to approach him now. If he did not apologize, then all his efforts would be in vain. Dong Tao could no longer be counted on, and it was good that he had a backup plan. Meanwhile, Guan was walking down the street, and thought that it was really cool that several girls themselves came up to him and asked for his phone number. Had he really become popular? Suddenly, the headman and the red-haired boy greeted Guan. Did the basketball star, Pan Jiang, really come here? He took the time to come to his pitiful swimming qualifying round. Guan asked how he liked the show, and whether it was really spectacular. Jiang was literally seething with anger, but he had to control himself. He couldn't explode now, and he could kill him a little later. Through force, he said that he congratulated Guan on passing the qualifying round. Apparently, this year he will become the champion, and he is his classmate, so he is very proud of his victory. Guan was shocked by this behavior and asked Pan Jiao if he had hit his head. The arrogant boy could not stand it and began to shout that he was praising him, apologizing, trying to resolve their differences, and he was mocking him. This made Guan think, because something was wrong here. He himself would never apologize for anything, but so be it, he will play along with him. The coach started running after Guan again, and he realized that he needed to get out quickly. The coach ran after the guy and literally begged him to wait and think about the offer, but Guan, running away, politely refused him, because he said that he did not want to get injured. The headman saw that the guy kept his word. He lost the argument and admitted it, and now he feels that today he has grown above himself. The cunning boy replied that he would have apologized to Guan anyway, even if he had won the argument, but it's a pity that he was so sure that he would win that he booked a table at the Qinya Xian restaurant, and in this restaurant they do not refund the advance payment. The head woman was shocked because she did not understand why he booked a table there, because it is a very expensive restaurant. Some time later, Guan returned to the dormitory and mocked the glass goddess, because if she came out of the mug, he would turn into a diamond prince and would be too much for her. Suddenly, the guy's phone suddenly rang. It was the headman's friend who said that something happened to Sun. She still hadn't returned home, and she couldn't get through to her. She said that she would go to dinner with Pang Jian. Guan at first he didn't understand why she called, because it was natural that Sun would go to dinner with him, but her friend shouted that he himself asked her to look after her. When the friend hung up, he realized that something was fishy. Pan Jiang invited the headman to dinner. He was probably up to something, and Sun might be in danger. Call the headman. The subscriber was unavailable. He also could not reach her. It seems that something really happened. The hero knew that Jiang would cause problems. Suddenly, as he was leaving the dorm, he saw several guys. These were Pang Jiang's friends. They knew exactly where he was. With lightning speed the guy came down the stairs and called them, because he had a conversation with them. The first question was, where is Pan Jiang? But his friends reacted aggressively, because they didn't understand why the hell he was talking to them and stopping them from passing. They wanted to remember him and take revenge. The aggressive reaction of Zhang's friends was followed by a powerful kick to the head. Other friends also began to defend themselves, because they wanted to avenge their comrade. With incredible agility and ease, Guan dodged their attack. And then he took both of them by the head, and he squeezed them in such a way that they hit each other. Heroes last time asked where Peng Jiang was. He didn't want to be forced to use force. The rascal's friends replied that Jiang went to the restaurant. He invited Song to Qin Yixuan. Guan ordered them to pray that Xiaoxuan would be okay, otherwise he and Peng Jiang would be scraped off the walls. The friends were amazed at such strength and aggression from Guan. One of them immediately realized that he had to tell Jiang that this bastard was coming towards him. But after calling, Jiang also did not answer. I was in touch with him. Meanwhile, Jiang was thinking that he bought an expensive device that blocks the network, and no one will interfere with them. They ate and had a nice conversation. There were special snacks on the table to improve appetite. Jiang heard that where Song is from, people like these. The girl was eating and thinking that it was strange. The network had disappeared for some reason. It was already late. She wanted to eat a little and go home. As soon as she ate some food, she immediately began to feel dizzy. The scoundrel immediately ran up to the headman and noticed that she looked unwell, after which he asked if she was okay or if everything was wrong with her. She held her head, saying that she was very tired and wanted to go home. Jiang immediately stopped her, because she had nowhere to rush. There was still a lot of food. The girl immediately started screaming, because she could not tolerate violence. This scoundrel ordered a room with soundproofing, and no one could hear the girl. He ordered Sun to sleep, because after that she would feel better. Jiang believed that the headman herself was to blame. He didn't understand what she saw in this Guan, and why she kept clinging to him all the time. He even apologized to him for her sake, but she still didn't even give him a chance. After tonight Jiang will take full responsibility for her. When suddenly, Guan breaks down the door and bursts into the room. He immediately shouted that Pan Jiang was a brute. Guan would never have thought that Jiang would stoop to such a thing. Having hit the villain in the face, he ordered him to move away from the girl. The sly man immediately began to deny and said that he had not done anything to her, and there was no point in fighting, because she just fell asleep. The hero immediately began to wake up the girl to leave with her. But Jiang didn't think so, and secretly began to try to attack the guy. He didn't want to let them get away. Following the redhead's insidious attack, Guan counterattacked with an elbow right in the face. Instantly, the insolent man began bleeding from his mouth. Because he drugged a classmate, and after that he is now an unknown person. Jiang was in damn pain and didn't understand. This is how Guan learned to fight. Suddenly, for protection, he took out a bottle, and with a broken face he shouted that Guan was about to get it from him. Guan was much smarter and more cunning, and also shouted that it was impossible to even fight normally with a creature like him. Because he hit Jiang between his legs, he doubled over in pain. Guan spat at Jiang and wished for his balloons to burst. Suddenly, a waitress came in and asked them to stop, or they would call the police. But it was good for Guan, because it was great, and it was worth calling her, because this trash gave the girl sleeping pills. If anything happens to her, their restaurant will be responsible for it. Guan's friends and the village chief's girlfriend also entered the room and wanted to know what happened. Guan explained to them that Pan Jiang had drugged Sun with sleeping pills, and they should not stand like idols and take her to the hospital. The guy's friend asked if he would go with them, but he wanted to stay here. The restaurant called the police, and he was going to tell them what happened here. The impudent Jiang said that he understood everything. He was in great pain, and he asked Guan to call an ambulance, but he refused. Some time later, Guan found himself at the police station. The police asked why he beat Jiang. The hero explained because he gave sleeping pills to a classmate and tried to rape her. The policewoman was incredibly aggressive against him, because according to the law he has no right to maim him. He is a student. She was indignant that he did not know even such basic things. Guan noticed some detail. For a policeman, the girl was nothing at all. This angered her more, because she saw where he was staring and asked to examine him in the eyes. The hospital said that due to his blow to the groin, the victim now has serious health problems and will need treatment. Another policeman asked the girl to rest for a while, and he was going to interrogate him, and she would file a report. Guan also turned to the officer that if she was sick, then she should really go and rest, and there was no need to prove anything with foam at the mouth and bulging eyes. He was a law-abiding citizen, and the victim was about to break the bottle on his head, and when he hit him in the groin, he was simply defending himself. The man decided to replace the girl, and turned to the guy, because he hoped for their cooperation. Guan did not mind, because he had just explained why he hit him. He had nothing more to say. Xiaoxiong needed to be tested for sleeping pills, so things would go faster. Some time later, events continued to occur at the police station. The police asked Tang Ying if the girl was really given sleeping pills. Suddenly, the girl was surprised that they were addressing her, and she listened to what they told her. The little sister was flying in the clouds again. She should have pulled herself together. After all, this is a police investigation. She knows that she is a doctor of science and this case is not at her level, but the girl asked her for something for the first time. The form says in black and white that tests showed the presence of barbiturates in the urine. This shameless Pan Jiang gave the girl sleeping pills, and then also filed a complaint against Guan. The policewoman exclaimed that this doesn't mean anything, and Guan is still to blame. He crippled a man and must answer for it. In fact, she was thinking that this guy really told the truth, but he still pissed her off, and she wouldn't make his life easier. Suddenly, Jiang's mother came in and asked if they had arrested that scumbag. Because of his kick, Jiang almost died. The mother wanted to kick that scumbag, and then have him imprisoned for life. The girl immediately began to calm down her mother. The person who hit Pan Jiang was already under arrest, and also, her son was not exactly a victim. He gave sleeping pills to his classmate. This needs to be investigated. It's not that simple. The woman couldn't believe it, because their Jiang couldn't do this. She was interested in evidence. Girls shouldn't think that since she's a police officer, she can invent anything, and in general, she was probably brought here through connections. The police officer immediately provided evidence, and she also asked the aggressive mother not to insult her, and not to tell her what to do, and how to conduct a police investigation. The aggressive mother believed that this cunning girl stuffed herself with pills. She wanted to destroy Jiang, and this is no proof. Suddenly, Guan's friends brought food and alcohol that were on the table and asked if they were considered evidence. The policewoman was delighted, because she saw that this was Guan's classmate, and noted that he was serious about the matter. It was natural. Guan was like a brother to them, and they knew what happened and would not allow him to be blamed. Xiaoxiong also came out to tell the officer that Qin Guang had not done anything illegal. He was innocent. He hit Jiang to save her. The aggressive mother yelled that Xiaoxiong was a fox and seduced her little Jiang. She was going to kill her. Suddenly, someone stopped the mother. It was a man who asked her to calm down. The mother made an excuse that she was simply worried. And then, she started screaming again, that they can say whatever they want, but the only victim here is Jiang, and she will not leave this bastard alone. She has already called their lawyer, and let the court deal with him. In the meantime, the police said that Xiaoxiong can go, and they will find out everything. The lady was outraged and had no intention of returning to the hospital until they freed Guan. At the same time, Guan was incredibly bored without a phone. Perhaps this mug lady will force him to undergo tests while he is in prison. The officer said that tests showed that Pan Jiang gave Xiaoxiong sleeping pills. The victim is also ready to stand up for him. She claims that he injured Pan to protect her. This was outrageous, because the hero did not understand why in this case they would not let him go and arrest Pan Jiang. The officer replied that his guilt had not yet been proven, which means that they could not arrest him, but he was detained for crime scene, so they can't let him go. The guy admitted that he beat him, and was even ready to cover all the costs of treatment. The evil police also announced that he was detained for 15 days. Guan was incredibly shocked when he heard this. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, the goddess appeared, who saw that he was in trouble again, and understood that he would beg her to help him again. The hero began to explain to the goddess that now was not the right time for the test, and he did not want to go for it. But this did not depend at all on him, and on the goddess. By the way, she had already explained that the glass sucks him in when he is ready to carry out a new test, and of course, since she is here, it means the time has already come. The police saw that something started to happen to the guy and he started screaming. And suddenly, he hit his head on the table. The lady asked him not to worry, because it was just an arrest, and they will not torture him. He is allowed to use the computer. You can say he will have something like an unscheduled vacation. The officer will agree on everything with his university. The officer did not understand why he continued to cry. She made an exception and allowed him to use the computer. Guan asked her to leave. She could not understand his suffering. At the same time he thought that this goddess would probably make him sit in prison for tens of thousands of years, and he didn't want it at all. Some time later, they found themselves in a circle. It seems that, having learned from bitter experience, she covered up her charms this time, but maybe that's not the point. Indignantly, the guy began to ask what she was doing with him, and why she was playing with him. She called herself a goddess. then she needs to behave like a goddess. If he screws up in the tests, then she will also suffer. The girl realized that he wanted to see what she really looked like. She didn't mind, and ordered him to get ready. Now she will show him what kind of goddess she is. Suddenly, her eyes shone with a bright flame. She appeared before the guy in her majestic form. Looking at him, she asked if he now doubted that she was a real goddess. The hero immediately bowed down. Now he has no doubt, he is a pathetic mortal, bowing before her truly divine power. To her detriment, she did not show him her true form because she was afraid that he would not be able to bear the sight of her real form, but since he had seen her, he could simply call her the glass goddess. Guan I will thank the glass goddess for forgiving him, but if the sacred glass has not yet regained its strength, then why did she come out of it? This happened because he threw a tantrum. She decided that he was in danger, but it turned out that he was simply locked up for 15 days. I must say that the goddess was disappointed in him. They, the gods, are locked up for billions of years, and he whines because such nonsense. Since the guy is immortal, his life is short, not like the gods, and it is unknown how many days he will still have in his life. This is a big loss for him. Besides, he has business. He cannot hang around here for so long. His film career it's going down the drain, and it's really dangerous. The goddess decided to help him, but she was offended, because she was saving up strength to go online, and also added that if the glass goddess was added to his friend, so that he would not forget to accept the request. The hero immediately wondered what the goddess could do to get him released. She couldn't kill this policewoman. Suddenly, he finally woke up. An officer stood in front of him, watching him closely. She decided that since he fainted from the news that he would be imprisoned, she thought it would be better to let him go. The guy was incredibly happy and did not believe that he could really go. The lady confirmed this and asked him to leave quickly. She was going to sort out the documents herself, and if he didn't disappear right away, she would change her mind. The hero realized that the goddess was really not a mistake, and the officer asked him to quickly get out of here. The girl, meanwhile, was thinking that she should have taught him a lesson and left him in prison, but she felt so strange. It was better for him to go, otherwise she would completely soften. Some time later, the guy was released, and the headman met him outside. Sun was wondering why he was released, since Officer Wu flatly refused to let him out. Guan said that he agreed to admit his guilt, pay a fine of 1,000 yuan and cover Pang Zhang's medical expenses, and he was released, which would cost him about 10,000 yuan. All this time the hero had a mug in his hands. The girl was interested in her, because she noticed that he carried her with him everywhere, and wanted to look at her. As soon as she picked it up, she discovered something. This made her suddenly run away, after which she shouted that she would go and thanked him, after which she said that they should see each other tomorrow. The guy didn't understand what was going on and why she ran away so quickly. There was clearly something wrong with it. It looked like an ordinary mug, and it was unclear why she turned so red. Looking at the mug, he saw that the glass goddess looked like a prostitute. She would drive him into his coffin with her jokes. He didn't understand why she wasn't in a dress, but in a bikini. The goddess spent too much energy manipulating the feelings of that policewoman. She was not dressed like that for his sake. After which, she said goodbye to the guy, because she needed to rest and accumulate energy. The next time they would see each other before the start of the test. The guy asked her to stop and explain where he would end up next time, but she did not listen to him. Since she didn't listen, he decided to wake her up by poking her on the mug. A few tens of minutes later, the hero arrived at the dormitory and heard some noise from the room. As I opened the door, he thought that his friends were discussing how to get him out of prison, but in reality they were playing a computer game and shouting at each other. The hero was speechless. He didn't even know what to tell them. But his friends were happy to see him back and asked him to get on the computer quickly. Tomorrow is the Olympics, so there will be light all night today. They will have time to play 3 more games. The guy shouted that they were soulless creatures and he would not play with them. Even when he shouted, the friends still continued to play, and he walked past them indifferently. Opening his laptop, he was planning to log in after this game. The next day was Wednesday and he was drinking a drink from his mug. There was a running competition that day, and only pink covers were left in the store. However, this is still better than a prostitute in a bikini on a glass. Friends immediately started laughing at the guy when they noticed his little case. But to avoid ridicule, he taped his comrade's nose and mouth. After that I closely watched the competition. The competition involved Wen and Song, who had to fight against each other. He peeled the bandage off his mouth and said that he knew that Guan would like them to be in different groups, but alas. Guan again asked him to shut up. This competition doesn't concern him at all. he may be good looking, but that doesn't mean that they both have a crush on him. Meanwhile, the time was approaching the start. Once again the trainer fired his signal pistol and shouted forward. With lightning speed, all the competing girls began to run. Wen immediately gained an advantage and ran ahead of everyone. Xiao Sun tried her best to catch up with her. Looking at the competition, the guy understood that Wen would show his usual level and, of course, Wen Sun would also run with all her might, and he hoped that nothing would happen to her. Moments later, Wen crossed the finish line and took victory. Unable to cope with the failure, Sun immediately fell to the ground after losing. Ven went up to her and helped her get up, after which she asked if she was okay. But the girl pushed her away, because she didn't want to accept help from her. The winner was indignant, she did not understand such behavior. Their gazes crossed and they looked at each other with hatred. A little nervously, Guan thought about what they said to each other there. They are probably jealous of him, he is afraid to ask, and is thinking of getting out of here before he gets too much from both of them. Suddenly, a friend approached him and asked where he was going. The head girl fell and hit herself, and Guan didn't even react to it. But Guan continued walking, and asked him and Gao to go, while he had work to do, and also asked him to ask the headman what one had told her. Suddenly he immediately understood his feelings and made it clear that he could count on him. Some time later, Guan arrived at the parking lot. He thought that all this didn't matter now, he needed to work in order to quickly pay the money for Pan's treatment. Suddenly, Wudong started calling Guan. Guan started lying about how he was very busy and was going with the professor to do some research, but the police officer paid the fine instead of him and was going to come to him. The guy thanked the officer and said that he would definitely return the money to her, after which he asked not to worry, he would give everything back when he returned, and then he immediately passed out. He was in no hurry to return her money, and he would harass her the same way she harassed him. A few days later the second round of the swimming competition began. Guan again won the competition. All the spectators were happy with his victory, and later he was nicknamed Torpedo Guan. This was an incredibly strange nickname for a hero. The head girl also approached him and congratulated him. He was again in first place, and apparently she was rooting for him for good reason. Guan asked how the headman was feeling, because she had recently been injured, but the girl was fine. Bai Fan explained everything to her, then she just wanted to win, that's all. The guy noticed that she was behaving somehow strangely, and did not understand what Ven could say to her. Suddenly, the coach started chasing the guy again, and he realized that it was time to run. He asked the headman to take care of himself, and then began to run incredibly fast from the coach. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiong was thinking about how to explain everything to him. After several tens of minutes of rapid running, the guy ran to his car. He decided to call Wen to find out what she said to Sun, because he hoped that it was nothing that would put him in an awkward position. The girl kindly replied that she just said that Guan talked a lot about her. He said that she often helps him. Guan did not understand what it means that he often talked about her. This did not happen, because of when she behaved strangely. I misunderstood everything. Wen noticed that Guan had not dated anyone for 3 years, he would soon graduate from university, and she was his friend. So she decided to help him with this matter, because in her opinion, Xiao Xiong is not a bad girl. If he starts dating her, he will tell thank you Van for this. She also reminded him that he hasn't been spending much time on English lately, he plays a lot of games, goes to competitions, he also ended up in prison, he shouldn't forget about the main thing, no breasts if he doesn't pass the 4th level. After finishing the conversation, the guy was interested in how she knew that he was in prison. But he also understood that she didn't have to worry about her English, because he couldn't wait to see Wen's breasts. Meanwhile, the officer was near the Wujing University. She was going to watch him near the university, because sooner or later he had to return. Suddenly, some men started walking next to the officer. The girl immediately drew attention to them and their defiant appearance. She didn't understand what kind of freaks these were, however, it didn't matter. If they made a brawl here, then one call and her partner would be here, and they would tie them up, and at the same time she would get credit for it. Guan was incredibly happy that he had many orders today, it was truly his day. Suddenly, on his way, there were freaks standing right on the road. He immediately noticed them. One of them was standing with a brick, and was probably going to throw it right at the car. Guan saw this and realized that he and his car were in danger. Suddenly, a brick flew straight into the windshield of the car. The hero immediately got out of the car, and I understood that now someone would be in trouble. Suddenly, he realized that he wanted to change his desire. Previously, He wanted Bai to be unable to accumulate 5,100 points in Dota in a season, but now he wants a policeman to appear here and save him. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, an officer appeared and shouted at the hooligan to stop. She was outraged to the extreme because they had the audacity to vandalize right in front of her. Guan was also shocked. Before he could make a wish, she was already here. With her he would not be able to beat anyone. The hooligans immediately drew attention to the figure of the policewoman and asked her to wait. Daddy would deal with this bastard, and then come up to her. Another scoundrel asked the girl to leave here and said not to pretend to be a heroine. Today he is in charge, so he will let her go, because he believed that she was not a policeman, and there was no need to get involved in this. The officers immediately stood in front of Guan and shouted that he was under her protection. If they attacked, they would all be in trouble. The hero was surprised by this behavior. He was protected like a child, but he was not so weak. The bandit pointed at Guan and ordered everyone to deal with him, and he wanted to take over the girl. The guy was also not easy and took out a baton. He broke his glass, and he would break his face. Suddenly, the girl noticed the baton in his hands and asked him to give it back. Chaos was happening. The criminals also had weapons and were ready to attack Guan. The girl bravely came to his defense. With only one blow she was able to neutralize one criminal. And then, literally with one kick, she neutralized the next villain. Guan was also no slouch, and with a powerful movement of his hand, he struck the bully straight in the face. Their backs collided, and the girl asked him to leave. She could handle it herself. And after that, she exclaimed that the bandits should come to her, because she believed that none of them knew how to fight. She asked the guy to run away from here. She could deal with them herself, and then she would make them pay for repairing his car. The hero was shocked. She took the baton from him and was satisfied. But it seems that she didn't even need a club. She did an excellent job with her feet. Many bandits fell in battle with her. They looked incredibly pitiful. One of the strongest bandits began to run with nunchucks, and shouted that the nonentities were about to get it. With dexterity, the girl blocked the blow with the baton, and said that it was a good blow, but he should try again. Guan exclaimed with Wu that he doesn't have health insurance, so he should get out of here, and they should postpone talking about the fine until their next meeting. Suddenly, the main bandit stood right in front of him and noticed that the guy was running away. The bandits surrounding him were going to hit him. It was incredible arrogance on their part. Guan neutralized them with 2 powerful blows. And then he added a few kicks to finish him off completely. This guy was much stronger than all the bandits who stood in his way. The officer also dealt with the bandits who stood in her way. They even asked for mercy. One of the bandits realized that Pan had deceived them. He gave them only 10,000 yuan for him. He thought that he would be an ordinary guy, but it turns out he knows how to fight. Their affairs were bad. They needed to get away quickly. But Guan was not going to give them such an opportunity, since he already called the police. A few minutes later the police arrived at the scene. The bandits already realized that the end had come for them. The officer also watched with pride as criminals were taken to prison. The lady saved him from the bandits, and it's time to return the money to her. Guan, as if nothing had happened, asked her what needed to be returned, but it seemed he was caught. The policewoman ordered him to stop fooling around. But he was just joking, and there was no need to react like that, after which he showed his wallet. He didn't have cash with him, and he doesn't know how to use online transfers. He only has a bank card, and he can only give the money to another time. As it turned out, the officer was ready for such an event, and she had a terminal with her through which he could pay using a card. The hero realized that he would now lose everything he had earned in the last days. At the same time, the girl asked him not to worry, because the bandits would pay for the repair of his car. Guan also thought that Pan Jiang most likely sent them, but the officer asked him why he thought that. The guy asked not to take him for an idiot. By the way, he studies at the university, which means he's not that stupid. The officer stopped objecting to him, because she will still have to investigate the case of attempted rape. If so, then she will also deal with this case, and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and the guy should return to the university and behave quietly. And she, in turn, promises that Pang Zhang's family will not bother him anymore. The hero thanked her for her concern and would wait for further news, but the girl also decided to ask why he was being such a fuss, because she had a feeling that the guy was hiding something. Guan explained that his mother was sick and needed very expensive medicine. He was working to help the family. Because of the fine, he would apparently have to drive all night today, but there was nothing he could do. The girl immediately felt guilty, and she said that she could return the money, and he would give it back when he could. She felt incredibly ashamed, She didn't think he had such problems in his family. Having thanked her for the offer, the guy decided that it would be better to stretch himself and save up everything again, because it was better not to go into debt, but he did not understand why she suddenly became so kinder. Was it really because of what he said? The embarrassed girl also decided that it was time for her to go, after which, she left in a police car. Her partner suggested that the girl seemed to like Guan, but the lady began to deny. She then let him go because she was not in herself, and today she was going to hit him twice as hard. And if it weren't for these idiots, she would have broken him properly. His partner began to laugh, and added that her plans were thwarted by the scoundrel Pan Jiang, and for this Jiang needs to be thoroughly punished. It was on him that the girl wanted to vent her anger. The next morning, Wu Tong started calling Guan on his phone again. She started screaming for him to come downstairs, but when the guy woke up he didn't understand what she wanted from him. He had already given her all the money. The officer shouted that if he didn't come down right away, she would tell everyone in his dorm that he had enuresis, and would scream right from here that he was wetting the bed. It worked instantly, and Guan began to get ready to go down to the officer. The girl understood that she was doing well. Today she had already solved the murder, and look, she would also soon figure out Pan's case. And she also noticed that the headman said that he would never get up so early. In her opinion, it was not difficult to get him up. The headman was so young that she still had to study and study. The head girl was shocked by what the officer said, because the girl acted like a child, and the head girl felt like she also had a crush on Guan. Literally a minute later Guan was already there. Officer Wu started laughing, because she didn't understand why a guy would carry a glass with him everywhere, and even in such a case, he's a grown guy, he should be ashamed to appear with it in public. Guan was too lazy to argue with the officer, and he agreed. After which, he approached the old woman and asked how she was doing and how she was feeling. She replied that she was fine. At the same time, the officer watched the happy teenagers. She felt uncomfortable that Guan was not communicating with her. She immediately turned away and ordered them to come with her. At the same time, events took place in the hospital where Pan Jiang was lying. His father exclaimed that he would now call his classmates to find out how this Chen Guan was doing. The guy was happy, because he realized that they had sent someone. The father could not allow the bastard who beat his son to just walk free, and Jiang can be sure that Guan is now 10 times worse than him. The mother, in turn, believed that beating him was not enough, and she also needed to sue him, and this girl also needed to be taught a lesson. She did not dare to seduce her son. Suddenly, someone opened the door to the room where Jiang was lying. These were the officers who walked with Guan and Xiaoxiong. The officer showed her ID and told father that he was accused of attempted contract murder and asked him to come with them. My father wanted to call his lawyer and begged him to let him go. Jiang started shouting at the officer to let his father go because he is the vice president of Tong Yuan. Since he committed a crime and all the evidence is against him, he is accused of drug abuse. Until he is released from the hospital, he will be closely monitored by 2 officers, and after discharge he will have to cooperate in the investigation. Indignant, the guy shouted that how dare they defame the name of their family. The vile mother also started screaming at the officer, calling her a bitch. She was incredibly angry. No one dared to do that to her husband and son. The girl also grabbed the evil mother and advised her to remain silent. Everything she said could be used against her in court. In addition, the officer saw a file from which it follows that her husband was responsible for the construction of the bridge in his early years. At the same time one of the engineers went missing. Because of this, the husband's involvement in this case will be established. Jian's father was at a loss. He did not know what to do. And the mother began to cry. She thought it was unfair, thinking that the Pan family would not dare to do something so terrible. At this moment, Jiang realized that their family was over. A moment later, the police and detainees began to leave. Guan turned to the criminal and blew him a kiss. And then, before he lost his mind, he asked him to apologize, at least for show. But the impudent man was not going to do this, believing that the 2 of them would pay for it. At the same time, Guan was gloating incredibly strongly. Suddenly, someone behind him began to approach. It was the officer who ordered him to stop gloating and began to pull him away. Guan and Xiaoxiong sighed with relief because it was finally over. At the same time, the girl looked at the guy with loving eyes. Guan immediately noticed this and asked the girl why she was looking at him like that. She replied that he looked quite cute. Xiaoxiong asked him to stop with nonsense, because he needs to prepare. Tomorrow is the semi-final of the swimming competition, and the whole class is waiting for his victory. Besides, endless gossip fuels interest in him among the girls. Everyone is just watching the recordings of his swim. It's cool to be famous, but the guy was still single, he had a bunch of fans, and no one had yet declared their love. Suddenly, the girl suddenly stopped. She was depressed because she didn't know what to do so that he would finally notice her feelings. Once in the dormitory, the hero opened the closet with the suit that the producer gave him. With anger, he did not understand why that bearded producer did not call him. He said that he would give him the opportunity to earn 100,000 in 30 seconds. When he called the producer's phone, the number he dialed did not answer. The guy became even more angry. He was going to rip out all his fucking hair and force him to eat it. Meanwhile, events were taking place in the studio. The bearded producer was furious because someone had lost his expensive armor, but the employee reminded him that this armor was given to that guy Chen Guang, who left in it. The producer couldn't believe that he forgot about the price. All these days he was very busy with the picture. Guan probably thought that he was an ungrateful person. After which, he immediately called Brother Guan and introduced himself as Deng Xiaojiang, a bearded producer. The hero also could not forget him. All this time he was waiting for his call, but thought that he had already forgotten about him. The bearded man had just remembered him. He had been incredibly busy lately, but now he was going to arrange a shoot for Guan, and also asked him to take the armor. When he arrived in front of the studio, the guy was stopped by a security guard. In bewilderment, he began to prove that Deng Xiaojiang had invited him and asked why he was not allowed in. The security guard replied that when he came to the television studio, he should have known that a pass was required. If he had not said that Deng Xiaojiang called him, he would have already thrown him out of here. Suddenly, Guan noticed that there were team members walking behind the guard. These were the same actresses whom Guan had previously saved. Amazed, the hero was shocked that these two popular actresses really came for him personally. Now he likes it even more. The guard was also shocked that they really came for him in person. There was no need for such a noble guy like Guan to lie to the guard. The actresses came up to him and said hello. Their names were Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage. And this is their agent, Sister Zhou. She was the manager of these ladies. They approached because they never thanked him for saving them, and invited him to come to them for tea after filming. Guan replied that any self-respecting man would help out such beautiful ladies in trouble. The lady was embarrassed, because he was their savior, and they are obliged to thank him. Suddenly, another girl intervened, who also wanted to show gratitude. She said that he could call the other girl Shiyue, and her beloved Yage. The hero understood that he first needed to go to producer Dan. He understood that his heart might not stand it, and he asked someone to take him away from here. The manager asked not to take Yage's words seriously. She is also a joker, why would she immediately become a favorite? The girl was unstoppable, and she told the truth, after which she called Guan sweetie. The girl was asked to stop scaring him with her chatter, let him first take pictures, and then they will figure it out. Filming for Guan was already being prepared. The manager approached him, because she was still thinking about how to repay his feat, and gave him a check. She wanted him to take it, and not be shy. Guan was incredibly embarrassed. If he was not mistaken, then this is a check for 100,000 yuan. He had never cashed such large checks before. The manager did this because she understood that it was better to resolve the issue with money. She couldn't have an affair with such big stars. Suddenly, the guy's check was taken right from under his nose. It was Yage, who was indignant because Sister Zhou thought that she could pay off in this way, and gives him only 100,000 yuan. Their lives were not worth that much, and his act was invaluable. Guan, meanwhile, thought that this girl was a cunning snake, and she wanted to take his money. The girl again started to delay. Sister Yage doesn't understand what she's doing at all, and they should get back to filming, and there's no need to delay the process. The girl began to apologize to Guan, because she went too far, and invited him to the filming. The manager again said that she didn't know how to thank him and said to go back to filming and she would think of something. Guan was already beginning to think that his money was missing. A moment later, a man approached the guy, who immediately greeted him. Deng Daoxiang put him in charge of filming, and asked him to let him familiarize himself with the script. The guy was happy even with this development of events. The bearded producer took care of him. He appointed a special person to tell him about the script. The acting skills that he had practiced a little would come in handy. The characters immediately began applying makeup for the shoot. They didn't have much time. The guy needed to act out a short story, and he asked if Guan already had acting experience. For the last 2 weeks, he had been counting a lot of books on this. even though the scenes only lasted 30 seconds, this was his key to success, and you need to act it out brilliantly. The assistant exclaimed that it was time to begin. After 2 hours, filming was still going on. The guy continued to play his role, but it didn't work out for him all the time. He tried to make an angry face, but the assistant asked him to start all over again. The face of an angry person looks completely different, open nostrils and clenched teeth. And with these nostrils, it was as if he was going to devour the enemy. He must be a great warrior who has a strong desire to kill, and according to his role, he must want to kill hundreds of enemy soldiers. The hero felt that he had just called his acting mediocre. The assistant was shocked, because the guy said that he studied acting for 2 weeks, probably, to portray this famous grimace is all he learned. He is hopeless. Meanwhile, the rescued actresses returned. Guan was thinking that she had really changed her mind and wanted to give him even more money, and the assistant was thinking that they had really come to help the boy. Yeji approached her brother and asked how he felt about the filming experience. Few newcomers get a 30-second scene. He has a chance to become famous. Guan wilted when he realized that she was not going to give him money. The assistant did not understand what happened to her, and why she was behaving so strangely. Yang Dao also did not look good. He had problems during filming. Yang Dao begged the two of them to save him. Deng Daoxiang said that they are the best of the young actresses. He can't do this anymore, and asked them to do something with him. He's a mediocrity. Yeji asked the assistant to watch his tongue. If he lashes out at little brother Chen Guan, she will grind him into powder. Now later they were all sitting together and trying to film the scene. Everyone already thought that this was the end of filming. Encouragingly, Yeji told her brother that God is just. He opened doors for him, but it seems he changed his mind. He shouldn't worry that he won't become an actor, but he is great at other things. Guan apologized. He knows that there is a limit to his talent, and decided to go and apologize to Deng Daoxiang and leave. He wanted money, but he definitely couldn't bear this shame. Suddenly, Deng Daoxiang called the guy and said that they were starting official filming. The hero was terrified, because there were many people near him and everyone was looking at him. He asked the goddess to save him and give him an acting test. Suddenly he realized that there was no mug in his hand. Because of that stupid case he left the mug in the car. All he could do was try his best. The bearded producer wanted to cheer him up, because he noticed that the guy was nervous. He used to act like a superhero, and the producer doesn't believe that he won't be able to play these measly 30 seconds. A moment later, the shooting began, and the guy in the frame looked lost. Each time he failed to act, filming began again, and all the time the guy couldn't make a face suitable for filming. The assistant even asked to take a break because all the actors were tired, and the producer agreed. Guan approached the producer and asked him to forget. He was not suitable for them at all. He is mediocre in this matter, and does not want to detain everyone. He was incredibly ashamed, and he can't do this anymore. You can't torture everyone because of fucking 100,000 yuan. The producer was also uneasy, but he said that Guan was not to blame, and after the break they would try again, and they would definitely come up with something. The producer understood that if he left, then no one knew what would happen to his reputation. Meanwhile, someone was arguing. Someone was asking Zhouye to apologize to little brother Guan. It was Yeji, and she was arguing with Zhou, to whom he said that he saved them and this is a great feat, but he will not become an actor. Producer Den was messing with him, because he owes him a lot. They can't mess around with this mediocrity endlessly. Producer Dan immediately shouted at them to shut up. It was his decision, and it was not up to them to decide what to do with this kid. This was immediately followed by deathly silence. After that, the producer asked to forget about him. In this team the last word is always his. He will not let him be offended, and even asked to call him not Producer Dan, but simply Uncle. He immediately turned to his uncle because they had been filming this scene for so long, and he didn't want to delay anyone anymore, and they should make one more try, and after that he would leave. Guan's only chance would be if he called the goddess. The producer agreed. He announced a rest for 10 minutes, and then they would continue. There was little time, and Yeji suggested that he practice. But the guy understood that it wasn't worth it. He was simply unaccustomed to playing in front of such a crowd and a bunch of cameras, and he was going to go to the car and take a sip of water. The girl would be incredibly surprised when he returned. Zhou behind him exclaimed that he was betting 80,000 yuan that when he returned, he would still be just as mediocre. Guan told him to prepare some money. A few minutes later the guy approached the car. With incredible effort, he called on his sister, the goddess, to come and save him. But the lady was motionless. Guan thought that she was pretending not to hear him. The guy began to pretend that he wanted to pee, and for some reason he didn't see a toilet anywhere, and thought that it was possible. He began to unbuckle his belt, and he looked straight into the glass, laughing furiously. Meanwhile, the goddess lay quietly and basked in the sun. Suddenly, the goddess exclaimed that he did not dare threaten her. After which, the goddess began to shout that she was busy developing the next test, and he was pathetic bio-garbage. The gods could not send her someone more reliable, and asked her to hide this thing. The goddess would help him. If the goddess wants to give him the test now, then he asked her to do it because he needs that 80,000 yuan. If she gives him the acting test, he can win the argument with that asshole and earn 80,000 yuan. The goddess immediately started screaming. If they rushed, he might die in the circle. Besides, his acting skills were not enough to pass the test, so he should have just given up. But the guy didn't care. He didn't want to live in a world where he was losing an argument to that degenerate. The goddess agreed to help him one more time, but asked him to promise that he would not remove the cover from the mug again, otherwise next time she would give him shock therapy. Guan undoubtedly agreed with his sister. He could do anything with her, and now he asked her to hurry up. The film crew might think that he had escaped. The goddess called him a moron. She will take control of his mind when he runs on a horse, but she will not be able to hold out for long. If she spends subsequent forces on his show-off, then next time in the circle the goddess will beat him up. Before the break ended, Guan smugly began to walk onto the set. Everyone was incredibly surprised because they were amazed at the guy's incredible confidence. Yage was incredibly happy with his attitude, and asked him to practice so that he would not waste all his confidence, but the guy refused. He was already ready. Guan incredibly wanted to see the cockerel's face when he took his money. The producer announced that the break was over and it was time to start filming. The hero begged the goddess to help him. The producer also believed that brother Guan could not lose. And the self-confident cockerel was already thinking about how to spend the money he won. The goddess asked him not to do anything because she was going to take control. After that, she immediately activated her power. With her help, she took control of the guy's body. The actresses watched Guan's acting in amazement. The guy was inimitable. He easily managed to play as needed from the first take after the break. With the help of the goddess, he easily played all the scenes as needed. The producer did not understand how this was possible. It was a perfect and unique acting performance. The assistant immediately came over and asked if everything was okay. Dan exclaimed that it was shot perfectly. After filming, Yage immediately started calling for her brother. She was amazed and knew that he would handle it like a real emperor, but the guy chalked it all up to luck, although in fact the goddess really didn't let him down. The second actress also noted that he played perfectly and was a great guy. Zhou didn't understand how he did it. It's impossible, and he thought that he and the producer agreed with this mediocrity to split the money. Dan, in turn, answered him that you need to be able to lose, and he disappoints him. As soon as the rooster looked at Guan's acting, he was dumbfounded. The guy knew that with the help of the goddess everything would be simple. He had to ask her right away. The goddess was indignant. He himself had to play this role. But she was not going to argue with him. The goddess would go to sort things out completely so that he would not be killed in the next place. Rejoicing, Guan approached Mr. Zhou and asked how he liked his game. The ignoramus immediately bowed down and asked to accept his deepest apologies for his rudeness. He was very sorry. The hero noticed that everything was fine. He was also worried about the quality of his play. He understands. But Mr. Zhou seems to have forgotten something. Dan also added that Zhouya should not delay. He lost, but don't be upset. The gentleman was dumbfounded, but the money should be transferred to Guan's account soon. A minute later, 80,000 yuan was transferred to the hero's account. The guy immediately called his father and asked him not to ask where he got this money from. He earned it by honest work, without breaking the law. This should be enough for his mother's medicine until the end of the year, and he asked his dad not to forget to take care of himself, and smoke less, and don't tell your mom that he earned so much money, she'll worry. Suddenly, father said that Wujing City Hospital reported that she would be examined soon. Most likely, it would be possible to transplant her kidney, but it would cost 500,000 yuan. The father also added that this was a rare opportunity, maybe this time, but the guy understood everything and said that he would try to earn more money. After which he said goodbye to him. The hero sighed with incredible heaviness, because he needed to save another 300,000 yuan. Having come to his senses, the hero realized that he should forget about this. If he asks the goddess for anything else, she will strangle him. While he was driving a car, another car began to catch up with him. The girls who were in this car asked their brother to wait for them. These were the same actresses from the set. Guan did not believe in such a coincidence, and thought that something had happened. They asked her the brother was in such a hurry. He started talking about how he was still studying and going back to the university to prepare for the final exam in 2 weeks, but he knew that if he passed the exam, he would get a good reward, so he was in a hurry. As it turned out, there was an incredible coincidence, and they were also going to Wujing University, and they wanted him to give them a tour. But suddenly, he wanted to go to the amusement park alone to remember his childhood. He realized that he could not come to the university with such stars, he would be torn apart by envy, and he should go to the amusement park. There were so many people that they definitely wouldn't dare to follow him. Yage exclaimed with enthusiasm that this is great, the amusement park is much more interesting than university campuses, and asked the little one to show them the way. After that, he decided to tell it like it is. He has no desire to walk around with them at all, they are too famous, he wants to spend a quiet and peaceful life, and not be bait for the paparazzi. The girl was amazed, because this was not possible, she believed that no one would recognize them in everyday clothes. Guan was amazed at how annoying this girl was. He didn't care and pressed the gas pedal harder. He shouted that he was in a hurry and didn't have time. The girl literally begged him not to leave. And he shouted that she really liked him. But the guy had already driven quite far, and he didn't hear her. It seems that Yage scared him off, she wanted to reward him with money, but in the end he was left with nothing. Most people would be overjoyed if she confessed her love to them. The lady did not want him to run away at all, this would not happen, she did not agree. Meanwhile, the girls began to gradually catch up with him again, and the guy in his car already breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that he was an awesome driver, and left them without any problems. Suddenly, through the rearview window, he saw their car again. The girl was in anticipation, for her it was like a competition. Guan didn't understand how they could catch up with him. These seemingly cute little sisters are now behaving completely differently. Apparently he can't get away from the Ferrari in this broken-down bucket. Suddenly, the guy saw the light, but did not understand why it appeared, because there was ordinary water there. Was his savior really coming to the rescue? Last time the goddess said that she would take revenge on him. Guan should have been more careful. As soon as he found himself in another world, he asked her to stop, but she said that she had little energy, so she would harm both of them. Suddenly, the hero realized that he had stepped on the face of the goddess, and she aggressively asked to remove his leg. After which, she began to scream furiously, that Chen Guang is a creature, how dare he step on the face of the goddess. The hero didn't understand what it was. Is it really common among the gods to bury themselves in the ground, like a new goddess will grow up in the fall? The goddess was horrified, because in order to take possession of his body, she had to spend all her spiritual energy. She also lost her swimsuit, she did not have enough strength to hide in the sea of clouds, and now he is still mocking her. Guan thought that she had always bullied him, and now was the perfect opportunity to take revenge. But the goddess had an ace up her sleeve, and she told him not to approach. After all, she has two news, good and bad. If he tries to do something with her, then she will only tell the bad news. After that, the guy immediately promised not to do anything to her. Her expression made it clear that she was serious. The good news was that a narrowing appeared inside the mug. This will reduce the time for preparing the next test. Well, the bad news is that the constriction is too great, and he could have died before the test even started, but she was very kind to him, so she made changes, and thereby saved him. Otherwise, he would have to become the king of death for hundreds of millions of years. As soon as the news ended, he was just going to wait for her, and thought about how he could now take revenge on her. The next test should definitely teach Guan a lesson, and he immediately began his journey to take the test, and as a result, he missed a wonderful opportunity to take revenge on this stupid goddess. The hero found himself in a world where everything was pixelated. The world inside the mug was incredibly primitive. These were the consequences of his stupid actions. Originally there was a beautiful landscape with a beautiful lake, but now it is a pixel world. The rules were that he needs to drive this car and complete tasks. After each death he will start from the level he was on. He will have 100 lives, just like in the sea test. The hero considered it easier. Driving is in his blood, and he will never lose. Besides, he has 100 attempts, but the glass goddess said that he already has 99 attempts, and on the 100th time he will die for real. The first level was that he needed to get to radar number 1 while maintaining a speed of 120 km/h. Suddenly, some NPC knocked the hero's car off the road. The NPC didn't care about him at all, but he didn't die, he just turned over. Then 100 lives is a lot. Suddenly, a huge truck appeared out of nowhere, which smeared Guan's car like a pancake. He experienced incredible pain, although he himself became a pixel person, but dying was much more painful. The goddess also forgot to tell him that she noticed that his willpower was somewhat weak, so she added something. She added a doubling of the pain sensation. The guy literally started crying and asked to leave her alone. He incredibly wanted to put a sock in her mouth so that she would shut up. Finally, the gentleman managed to pass the first level after 13 deaths. The goal of the second level was to maintain a speed of 180 km/h for 20 seconds and survive. But also, the hero was given the opportunity to increase the characteristics of the car, and he decided to increase the speed so that the car could go even faster. For a person accelerating up to 180 km/h, the most important thing is not to be afraid of death. After pumping up, it was as if such a machine could take off. There was a turn ahead. Guan thought right now to demonstrate his driving skills. At the 18th second he entered a dangerous turn. At 19 seconds he immediately began to skid. And exactly at the 20th second his car exploded. A large number of attempts later, the gentleman was still able to pass the second level, and he needed to improve the vehicle. He was immediately unable to pass this level, due to the fact that he still had the habit of pressing the brake as hard as he could. At the third level, he also had difficulties, due to which he flew off the track. At the fourth level, he didn't even understand what he needed to do. At the ninth level, he was glad that he had finally reached here. After all this torment, the goddess must pay. In order to pass the ninth level, he needs to complete the Dakar rally. To pass the test, the hero has few lives left, and this time he had to be more aggressive. Very soon the guy managed to reach the finish line and complete the Dakar rally. He was overjoyed that he was finally free. He constantly crashed and was crushed. Sometimes his car even exploded. This theory of the goddess about his willpower caused him to suffer. The guy passed the test after 95 deaths. He barely endured these 9 levels, although the goddess said that she obeys the emperor of the gods, and he asked for the helpline number. He wants to report her, because it was real torture. As soon as he completed the level and found himself in the glass, the goddess asked him not to open his eyes. She placed her fingers over his eyes to cover them. The goddess realized that he was worthy to be her chosen one. He managed to go through all the levels on this wreck, and now he will be able to drive his car perfectly. After all that was said, the goddess pushed him into another dimension so that he could test his incredible abilities. The training inside the circle was very effective. Now he is a true driving god. However, it will be difficult to demonstrate your skills here, because their car is too cool. The guy was going to lure them to Fengquan Mountain, the racing track of Wujin City, and he immediately turned towards the mountain to get to it. The girls didn't understand why he turned. He probably wants to take him to a more picturesque place, especially on the mountain. Usually there are few people, but he's worried about being recognized. Meanwhile, the manager called one of the actresses and said that she knows that this is all because of her. She will find another chance to give him the check, and maybe they will not chase him today. After all, they are following them in 3 cars. The girl agreed to try to dissuade Sister Yage, but she knew how she can be. But they have nothing to worry about here. Since Sister Zhou is accompanying them, there is nothing to worry about. Gradually, they reached the mountain. The departure was directly directed towards Mount Fengquan. Suddenly, the hero saw something interesting. An incredibly familiar car. Guan really wanted to teach him a lesson from that same freak. When he was delivering tofu, this freak cut him off on the road, and he was afraid of scratching his car. He endured as best he could, but now he will take revenge on him. The spectators were indignant, because Lao Tzu was racing here. They were furious because they didn't understand that such junk had been left here. Another guy offered to break his car. His father gave him 80,000 yuan as pocket money yesterday. This should be enough to compensate him for the damage. These racing enthusiasts didn't even imagine who they would compete with. They are not capable of anything with their cool cars. They should get ready to eat the dust from under the wheels of the driving god. Guan began to drive up in his Tarante, and he was ready to defeat all rivals in cool cars. The men standing in his way were shocked that the guy wasn't slowing down. They didn't realize what he was up to. Meanwhile, the hero quickly stepped on the gas. No one could stop him. he was completely invincible. And right in the face of the people standing in his way, he began to drift. After which, he made a sharp turn right before the cliff. He also shouted at them to eat the dust. The riders did not understand how he dared to do such a thing, because for them it was a blow below the belt. The guy might be dead at the next turn. If he makes a mistake even by a millimeter, he will crash. The riders believed that he would not be able to handle it. One of them wanted to see him dead or alive because Guan spat right in his face. The car of girls and racers was rapidly approaching Guan. At incredible speed, the hero made very sharp turns. Yage thought this turn was too narrow, they might crash if they tried to drift through it. She didn't even believe that little brother Guan was so cool. Suddenly, several cars overtook the girls. The lady realized that Guan was struggling to get away and thought she was so scary because he thought she was going to eat him up or something. The other girl realized that she actually looked like she was going to eat him up. It was necessary to catch up with the guy to understand if anything bad had happened to him. Meanwhile, the guy was picking up speed more and more rapidly. He had no equal, and he continued to go first. Through the rear-view glass, he couldn't see his opponents, and didn't understand why they needed such cool cars. They will only be able to compete with the god of driving in their dreams. It was all the power of training inside the mug. To become like this, he needed to die 95 times. Finally the guy broke away. How cool it was to be such a good driver. You need to call those stars and say that further pursuit is useless. Guan called Shiyue and asked him to tell Yage that there was no point in them chasing him anymore. They really shouldn't be seen together in public because they were too noticeable, and asked Yage not to chase him too much because he was worried about their safety. Now they were driving 40 km/h, so he didn't have to worry, after which she said goodbye, maybe in the future, when there is a chance, and not find some place where they won't be so easy to recognize, and they can have a good conversation. Suddenly, Yage asked the girl not to hang up. Yage said on the phone that she wanted to thank him for saving them, and bought him a Philip watch. If he wants to pick it up, he will have to meet. The guy thought it was really cute, but he is used to looking at the time on his phone, and thinks that it is for him won't be useful. Considering it to be an ordinary watch, he thought that it was unlikely to be worth much, and he needed to Google it and see the prices. Suddenly he discovered that this watch was incredibly expensive, and considered it a mistake. His hair stood on end when he saw that they were selling for a couple 100,000 yuan, which would be enough to pay for his mother's surgery. The hero was very upset when he realized that he had missed out on so much money. His life was a series of failures. Suddenly Yage called him again. The guy thought that she still hadn't left him behind, and didn't understand where she got such persistence from. Yage persistently asked her little brother to immediately return to the top of the Fengquan mountain route. Guan didn't understand what they were up to, and why they hadn't left the mountain yet. The girl knew how to manipulate, and was not so stupid, and asked him to come here. This watch was intended specifically for him. If he did not need it, then she would throw it in the trash, or simply throw it off the mountain. Heroes kindly replied that there was no need to throw hundreds of thousands in the trash. He would pick them up in a couple of days, and then there were still a couple of racers riding behind him, so he couldn't come to them. Sighing with relief, the guy realized that he would soon be able to pay for his mother's operation, and he immediately turned off the call. Meanwhile, one of the actresses suggested that Yage's sister get his credit card number from the producer and give him money. But the girl didn't want to agree to anything. If she transferred money to him, she and her brother would have no reason to meet. And the lady realized that it seemed that the girl had not yet understood that Guan only cared about money, and he was not interested in it. At the same time, Yage incredibly wanted to meet him. A moment later, the riders again rushed after the hero, who wanted to take revenge on him. He did not expect that they would catch up with him so quickly. He underestimated them. While he was talking with Yage, he completely forgot that they were still chasing him. Now he will show them how to race on a dirt track. With the help of drift, he quickly got onto a dirt road. Suddenly, I heard some sound and realized that something had happened. With horror, he saw how one of the riders failed to enter the turn and fell into the water. Taking out his baton, the guy realized that he urgently needed to run and save him. The riders did not understand how he dared to approach them. He was also armed. They were going to attack him. But now was really not the time to argue with him, because their friend was dying there, and he found time to argue with him. His friends behaved like pigs, and were only used to having fun. The guy immediately took off his clothes. To get down and help the racer, he just wanted them to get lost on this dirt road instead of falling into the water, and he wouldn't let him die. Swimming ever closer to the car, he found the same racer, who screamed incredibly loudly and begged to be saved. The air pressure inside the car prevented him from opening the door. Because of this, he decided to use a baton to break the car window, and with incredible force he hit one of the windows. The glass shattered and it was possible to get inside the car. It was necessary to act quickly, before the car filled with water. He extended his hand to help the guy, and he got out faster. Shards from the broken glass cut his skin, but he continued the rescue. Using his injured arm, he began to manually pull the racer out. He successfully managed to get him out of the car and began to pull him to dry land. Fortunately, Guan managed to save the brave and arrogant racer. His friends immediately ran over to ask if he was okay, and they immediately began to carry him away from the scene of the incident. After overwhelming success, the guy immediately began putting on his clothes. Suddenly, he discovered something. Guan lost his club while rescuing him. The guy hoped that this would not prevent him from driving early. Suddenly, some guy approached him. The hero did not understand why he immediately attacked him, because he was now without a weapon.